Why can't you be more like him? She asked, so I stopped trying to be anyone else. Now she's with a man who yells at her, and I'm with a woman who adores me for me. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The first time she said it, I laughed it off. We were at a friend's party, and Jake, Sarah's husband, was holding court by the grill, flipping burgers with one hand and gesturing wildly with the other about some massive deal he'd just closed. Chloe nudged me with her elbow, her eyes fixed on him. God, look at him. He just has this energy, you know? Sarah says he's up for another huge promotion. Liam, when are you going to get a promotion? She said it with a smile, a playful glint in her eye. I squeezed her shoulder and kissed her temple. I'm pretty happy where I'm at, babe. Good team, decent hours. Let me be here with you. She hummed, a non-committal sound, and her eyes drifted back to Jake. I know. It's just, he's so driven. I should have heard the warning bell. But I loved her. I thought it was just a throwaway comment. It wasn't. The comparisons became a low, constant hum in the background of our relationship, the soundtrack to a life she was increasingly dissatisfied with. It was never a direct attack, always a sideways glance, a sigh of longing, a why can't we disguised as casual observation. We'd be watching a movie, and a character would drive a stupidly expensive car. That's the kind of car Jake drives. Must be nice to not have to worry about your transmission giving out. She'd pat my leg, a gesture that was supposed to be affectionate, but felt like pity. I'd spend a Saturday building her the floating shelves she'd wanted for the balcony, my hands smudged with dirt from repotting her plants afterward. She'd come home, glance at my work, and say, "Oh, Sarah's place is being professionally decorated." Jake told her money was no object. It's going to be in a magazine, I think. My acts of service, the things I thought showed love, were being measured against Jake's wallet and found wanting. I started feeling like I was in a race against a ghost, a specter of success I had no idea how to beat because the finish line kept moving. But our anniversary was coming up. For years, I was determined to make it perfect, to show her that our life, our version of success, was something to be cherished. I didn't book a trip to Bali. I didn't buy a diamond necklace. I planned us a night that was us. I booked our favorite table at Il Tramonto, the little family-owned Italian place where we'd had our first date. The walls were a warm terracotta, the candles dripped wax onto old Chianti bottles, and the owner, Giovanni, knew us by name. I ordered her favorite wine, the ridiculously overpriced Cabernet we'd discovered on a trip to Napa, a trip I'd saved 6 months for. I was nervous. I felt like I was trying to defuse a bomb with kindness. I saw her walk in, and my breath caught. She looked beautiful. She was wearing a new dress, something sleek and expensive looking. For a moment, hope flared. She'd made an effort. Maybe she felt it too, the importance of this night. She sat down, gave the restaurant a quick, appraising glance, and offered me a tight smile. "You look amazing," I said, pouring the wine. "Thanks. This place is cozy as ever." The word cozy landed with a thud. It sounded like small. We made still conversation through the appetizers. She scrolled through her phone more than she looked at me. Then her face lit up in a way it hadn't all night. It wasn't for me. "Oh my God," she said, turning the screen to show me. It was an Instagram post from Sarah. A glossy, filtered photo of a diamond necklace laid out on a velvet box. The caption, "Just because nights are the best nights." Gemstone couldn't ask for a better man. Hashtag Jake the Great, hashtag spoiled rotten. "Look at that," Chloe said, her voice dripping with a wistfulness that felt like a physical blow. "Sarah showed me that earlier. Jake just gave it to her. For no reason. Just because." I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice light. "That's a lot of diamonds." "It's not about the diamonds, Liam," she said, her tone sharpening as she put the phone down. "It's the gesture. It's about wanting to give your partner the world. It's effort." The words hung in the air between us, suffocating. The effort I'd put into this night. Booking the table, securing the wine, writing the card that was currently burning a hole in my jacket pocket, evaporated into nothing. Our main courses arrived. She picked at her osso buco, pushing the rich meat around the plate. "Is it not good?" I asked, my own stomach churning. "It's fine," she said, not looking up. It's just, I saw on Instagram that Jake took Sarah to that new Michelin star place downtown for their monthliversary or something. The one with the 6-month waiting list. He probably spent more on that one meal than you did on this entire night. The dam broke. The careful calm I'd been clinging to shattered. What is it you want from me, Chloe? The question came out quieter than I intended, laced with her exhaustion I didn't know I was carrying. She finally looked up at me, and her eyes weren't wistful anymore. They were cold, hard, resigned. I want what Sarah has, she said, her voice flat. I want a partner who doesn't just play it safe. Who doesn't think this? She gestured around the room with her fork, a gesture that dismissed our entire history. Is enough. Mark would have taken Sarah to Bali for an anniversary. He challenges her. Why can't you be more like him? The air left my lungs. It was the first time she'd said it so bluntly, so cruelly. The name. Mark. Not Jake, the idea. But Mark, the man. A real person she was measuring me against. Why are you with me? I asked, my voice a hollow whisper. If you want to be with someone like Mark. She put her fork down with a definitive clink and looked me dead in the eye. There was no playfulness left. No pretense. I don't know anymore, Liam. I really don't. You're just comfortable. And I think I'm done being comfortable. The words landed, one after the other, like stones on my chest. Comfortable. Average. Basic. They were the antonyms of everything she now valued. They were the antonyms of me. I looked at her, at the woman I'd loved for 4 years, and I didn't see her anymore. I saw a stranger sitting in my girlfriend's chair, wearing her face, and speaking a language of disdain I would never understand. The fight drained out of me. What was the point? You can't argue someone into valuing you. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just nodded slowly, the motion feeling foreign and mechanical. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and laid down enough cash to cover the meal and a generous tip for Giovanni. I stood up. Where are you going? She asked, a flicker of confusion breaking through her coldness. She'd expected a fight. She'd prepared for an argument. My silence was a script she hadn't read. I looked down at her, at the beautiful, miserable stranger who thought Bali was better than connection and diamonds were better than devotion. I'm done too, I said, my voice eerily calm. Enjoy the rest of your night. And I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her sitting there, surrounded by the ruins of an anniversary she never wanted, finally getting the silence she'd been asking for. The silence in the apartment when I got home was a physical presence. It was heavier than the one I'd left at the restaurant. It was the silence of a verdict delivered, a sentence passed. I stood in the doorway of my home and just breathed it in. The familiar scent of her perfume on the coat by the door, the stack of design magazines she left on the coffee table, the cozy throw blanket we'd bought together on a cold weekend. It all felt like a museum exhibit of a life that had just ended. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just felt numb, hollowed out. Her words played on a loop in my head. You're just comfortable. I'm done being comfortable. Why can't you be more like him? I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the spare room, staring at the wall, watching the headlights of passing cars paint shifting patterns on the ceiling. The numbness began to recede around 4 a.m., replaced by a cold, clarifying certainty. She had shown me exactly who she was. It was time to believe her. She didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. I pictured her going to Sarah's, spinning a tale of our fight, of how I'd abandoned her at the restaurant, leaving out the part where she'd emotionally eviscerated me over the Osso Buco. She'd be the victim. I was always the steady, reliable one until she needed me to be the villain to justify her unhappiness. The next day, I called in sick to work. My voice was steady on the phone. The world kept turning. The sun rose. And I started packing. I wasn't dramatic about it. I didn't throw her things in garbage bags. I was methodical, clinical. I went into our shared closet and took only what was unequivocally mine. I left the sweaters she'd borrowed, the t-shirts I'd technically bought, but she'd claimed as her own. I took my toothbrush, my shaving kit. I boxed up my books, my laptop, the few pieces of art that were mine from before we'd met. I left the framed photos of us on the walls. They felt like pictures of other people. My phone buzzed once around noon. A text from her. Chloe, we need to talk. 3 words. No apology. No, I'm sorry for what I said. Just a demand. A summons. I didn't reply. The power in that simple act, In denying her the response she expected was a tiny, glowing ember in the cold emptiness inside me. She came home in the late afternoon. I heard her key in the lock, her footsteps hesitant in the hallway. She found me in the living room, sealing a box of my records. She looked tired. Her makeup was slightly smudged, and she was still wearing the dress from the night before. She'd probably expected to find me a wreck, red-eyed and desperate for reconciliation. Instead, she found a man quietly, calmly, dismantling his life from hers. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and accusation. "Packing," I said, not looking up from the tape. "Liam, stop it. We need to talk about last night." I finished sealing the box and finally looked at her. Her arms were crossed, her posture defensive. She was waiting for my apology, for me to beg for another chance. She was ready for a drama where she got to be the magnanimous forgiver. "There's nothing to talk about, Chloe," I said, my voice flat. "You were very clear." She flinched, just slightly. My calmness was throwing her off script. I was upset. "You just walked out. What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to think exactly what you said," I replied, picking up another box to carry to the door. "You were supposed to think that I'm comfortable, average, and that you're done with me." "I heard you." She followed me into the hallway. "So that's it. After 4 years, you're just going to run away because of one fight." I stopped and turned to face her. The ember inside me glowed a little hotter. "It wasn't one fight. It was the last one. It was the one where you finally said the quiet part out loud." I took a step closer, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "You don't want me. You want some idea of a man that you've built in your head. You want a mark." Her name for him hung in the air. Her name for him hung in the air. She didn't deny it. Her chin lifted, a gesture of defiance that was pure fragility. "Is that so wrong? To want more? To want a partner who pushes for more? Who is more? I look at what Sarah has and I want that. I deserve that." There it was. The core of it. Not regret, but entitlement. Not a plea, but a justification. "So you're leaving me for an idea of a man you see on Instagram?" I asked, the absurdity of it all finally dawning on me. "Don't be pathetic," she snapped, her mask of wounded pride slipping to reveal the contempt beneath. "I'm leaving you for a chance at a better life. A real life. You'll never be able to give me that. You're just safe. And I'm done playing it safe." The words should have hurt. An hour ago, they would have. But now, they just were. They were facts about her, not judgments about me. She was a tourist in our relationship, and she'd finally decided the scenery wasn't glamorous enough. I looked at this woman I had loved, truly and completely, and I felt nothing but a vast, echoing silence. The love was gone. The pain was receding. All that was left was the certainty of my next move. I nodded slowly. "Okay." Her eyes widened. "Okay. What does that mean, okay?" "It means okay," I said, my voice quiet but final. "You're done. So am I." I turned my back on her, walked to the door, and picked up the 2 boxes I'd packed. My duffel bag was already by the door. It held everything I needed to start over. "Where are you going?" she demanded, her voice rising in pitch. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to fight for her. I was supposed to promise to be better, to be more like him. I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. I looked back at her one last time, standing in the doorway of the apartment we'd shared, surrounded by the life she claimed to hate, but was clearly terrified to lose control of. "Goodbye, Chloe." And I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I let it swing shut quietly behind me, the soft click of the latch echoing in the hall like a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. I got in my car, my transmission-prone, average, comfortable car, and drove away. I didn't look back at the building in the rearview mirror. I was already gone. The first week was a blur of numb mechanics. I crashed on my friend Dave's couch. I found a cheap, short-term lease apartment. I moved my boxes into empty rooms that echoed with silence, not memories. The pain was a quiet, constant ache, like a bone-deep bruise. But the strangest thing was the clarity. Without the daily background noise of her dissatisfaction, my own thoughts became deafeningly clear. I hadn't been holding her back. She'd been holding me down, anchoring me in a sea of my own perceived inadequacy. I didn't cry. I got angry, but it was a cold, useful anger. I channeled it. I joined a gym and spent hours there, not to become some sculpted god for her, but to feel the solid proof of my own strength. My body was mine again. My time was mine. My peace was mine. I muted her on my phone. I didn't block her, a decision that felt like power, not weakness. I wanted to see if the silence would bother her. It was a test she was destined to fail. Weeks bled into a month. I focused on work, not for a promotion to impress her, but because I found I actually liked my job when it wasn't being used as a weapon against me. I reconnected with friends I'd gently sidelined because they weren't couple friends. A text came through from a mutual friend, Maya. Maya, hey, heard about you and Chloe. Tough break. You okay? I was about to give a standard, I'm fine reply when a second text followed. Maya, for what it's worth, she's already seeing some new finance guy. Total tool. Lots of flash, not much substance. Sounds familiar, right? The ember of cold satisfaction glowed. The replacement had been acquired. The cycle was beginning again. For her, nothing had changed. For me, everything had. The reports trickled in, painting a picture I'd seen coming from a mile away. Maya became an unwilling source of intel. The new guy, Derek, was indeed a Jake 2.0. Loud, wore expensive watches, talked constantly about his portfolios. He'd swept Chloe off her feet with fancy dinners and hollow promises. But the facade cracked quickly. Maya witnessed it firsthand at a group happy hour. Text from Maya. Okay, you didn't hear this from me, but we were at the Oak Room last night. Derek was there. He was awful. According to her, he'd spent the evening holding court, but his jokes were cutting, his boasts were condescending. He'd openly criticized Chloe's choice of drink, calling it amateur. When she'd tried to join the conversation, he'd talked over her. Maya. Then he made some comment about her outfit. Said the color washed her out. I swear, Liam, her face just fell. She looked so small. It was brutal to watch. He's not a provider. He's a critic. The final act of karma was delivered via text a few weeks later. It was a masterpiece of irony. Maya, so? Update. Derek dumped Chloe. Apparently, he told her she was high maintenance and not worth the effort. I read the message 3 times. High maintenance. Not worth the effort. She had traded the man who found her worth the effort for a man who found her not worth it. She had left comfort for cruelty. She had begged for a challenge and gotten one, the challenge of being constantly diminished. The life of dazzling excitement she'd chosen had lasted less than 2 months. The grass wasn't greener. It was astroturf, laid over a foundation of absolute shit. And now she was standing in the middle of it, alone. The first text came at 1:17 a.m., a classic drunk dial in digital form. Chloe, I think I made a huge mistake. Can we talk? I read it. Felt nothing. Deleted it. The silence was my reply. A week later, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. Her voice was thick with tears, a performance for an audience of one. Liam, please. He was awful. You were right about everything. I'm so sorry. I just need to hear your voice. Please call me back. I deleted it. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry her gamble had failed. Then came the flying monkey. Her friend Sarah, the original source of the comparison poison. Sarah, look, Liam, she's really messed up. You need to be the bigger man here and talk to her. She learned her lesson. I answered, my voice flat. Her lessons are no longer my concern, Sarah. Please don't call me again. I hung up before she could sputter a reply. The final attempt was an ambush. She showed up at my new building, her face puffy, but her eyes were sharp with anger, not grief. The tears had dried up, replaced by pure entitlement. You've been ignoring me, she accused, blocking my path to the door. I have, I said, not breaking stride. After everything, you're just going to be a cold bastard about it. I stopped and finally looked at her. You got what you wanted, Chloe. You traded up. I hope it was worth it. I swiped my key fob and walked inside, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, her desperation finally curdling into rage. The mutual friend's summer barbecue was in full swing. I was there with Sophia. We were laughing by the grill, her hand resting easily on my arm. We looked and felt like a team. I saw Chloe before she saw me. She was alone, nursing a drink in the shade, looking brittle. She watched us. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the bitter comparison she was making. Driven by jealousy, she marched over as Sophia went to get us drinks. So this is why you couldn't answer my texts? You moved on that fast, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Hello, Chloe. I said, my tone neutral. Who is she? Another average girl who doesn't expect anything from you. I glanced over at Sophia, who was smiling as she chatted with a friend. A genuine, easy smile. She's someone who doesn't ask me to be like anyone else. Chloe's face contorted. You think you're so happy? This is just you settling because you couldn't handle a real woman. Sophia returned then, sensing the tension. She stood beside me, a calm, solid presence. She didn't say a word, just offered a polite, questioning look. I looked from Chloe's angry, miserable face to Sophia's kind, confident one. The contrast was the entire story. I turned back to Chloe, my voice calm and utterly final. I'm not settling. I'm finally seen. Excuse us. I put my arm around Sophia, and we walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The silence that followed us wasn't empty. It was full of the life I'd built, a life where her approval meant absolutely nothing. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.
My best friend smiled. Dude, you re not her husband. You re her employee. And she doesn't even pay you. After watching me work 14-hour days while my wife got her nails done, I work over 12 hours a day and handle all household responsibilities, while my wife does nothing and calls it men's duty. I am exhausted and considering drastic action. I am going to try to explain this without sounding like a whining victim, but I honestly don't know how much more I can take. I am an engineer making decent money, $95K, but I feel like I am drowning in responsibilities while my wife treats me like a live-in servant she doesn't have to pay. I know that sounds harsh, but let me paint you a picture of my typical day. Here is my typical day. My alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m., and I am the only one who wakes up because Vanessa isn't a morning person and needs her beauty sleep. I make coffee, check emails, and start a load of laundry before heading to the gym for a quick 30-minute workout. I had to cut it short because there is too much to do at home. Then it is off to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as a senior engineer. When I come home, the house looks like a tornado hit it. Dishes everywhere, clothes scattered around, unopened mail, and our dog hasn't been walked. From 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. is my second shift. Cleaning, cooking dinner, walking the dog, folding laundry, paying bills, and handling whatever crisis popped up that day. Meanwhile, Vanessa works part-time at a boutique for maybe 25 hours a week. She spends her free time watching Netflix, shopping online, or hanging out with friends. When I ask for help, her response is always, "That is men's work. I already sacrifice enough by being married." What exactly does she sacrifice? I have been trying to figure that out for 3 years. Let me give you examples. When our dishwasher died, I spent 4 hours installing a new one while she got spa treatments. When her parents needed rides to medical appointments, I took 3 days off work because she doesn't do well in hospitals. For groceries, I hit 3 different stores every week because she has specific preferences, but claims she doesn't know where anything is. The worst part is her attitude. When we have people over, she brags about how Elias handles everything domestic. Like I am some trained house manager at a recent dinner party, she told everyone. I don't plan anything. Elias does all the heavy lifting. I just focus on looking good and being charming. That is the natural division of labor in a healthy marriage. My friend Mason pulled me aside and said, "Dude, that is not normal. You are being used." When I try to discuss sharing responsibilities, she lectures me about how she is naturally better at emotional intelligence, while I am naturally better at practical things. She insists she contributes by maintaining relationships and keeping herself attractive for me. Here is what is eating at me. I am burning out completely. My work performance is slipping. I have gained 20 pounds from stress, and I have no time for hobbies or friendships. I used to find Vanessa attractive, but now I just see another person making demands on my time. The breaking point was yesterday. After a brutal 12-hour workday, I came home to find she had invited her sister for dinner without telling me. While I cooked and served them, they discussed how modern men are finally learning their proper role in marriage. Vanessa said, "Elias understands that a strong man takes care of his household. I never have to worry about anything." I stood there washing their wine glasses, listening to them talk about me like a well-trained dog, and something inside me broke. I love my wife, but I am starting to resent her. Is it wrong to expect partnership instead of servitude? I feel like I am going crazy. Help me figure out if my marriage is actually as lopsided as it feels. Update 1. Thanks for all the responses on my last post. The advice ranged from communicate better to run for the hills, but most people suggested I try setting clear boundaries and having an honest conversation before making any drastic decisions, so I tried the mature, adult approach first. I waited for a weekend when we were both relaxed, made her favorite dinner, opened a nice bottle of wine, and sat her down for what I hoped would be a productive discussion about our marriage. Vanessa, we need to talk about how we split responsibilities around here. I feel like I am carrying an unfair burden, and it is affecting my health and our relationship. She immediately went defensive. What do you mean unfair burden? I work too, Elias. Just because my job isn't as stressful as yours doesn't mean I am not contributing. I pulled out a list I had made. Everything I do versus everything she does in a typical week. I thought visual evidence might help her understand my perspective. Look at this, I said, spreading the paper between us. I work 60+ hours a week at the office. Plus I do 100% of cooking, cleaning, home maintenance, bill paying, family obligations, pet care, and household management. You work 25 hours a week and help me fill in the rest. You looked at the list like I had handed her a dead fish. Elias, you are acting like keeping house is some huge burden. Women are naturally better at emotional and social intelligence. Men are better at physical tasks and providing. So you are saying it is my biological destiny to be your house manager? I am saying you are good at it, and I am not. Why would you want me to do things I am bad at when you can do them efficiently? That is just wasteful. I tried a different approach. Okay. But what if we hired someone to help with cleaning? I could work less overtime to afford it. Maybe get some time back for myself. Why would we waste money on that when you can do it for free? That seems financially irresponsible. But I am not doing it for free. I am doing it with time I could be spending on other things. Time has value too. She waved her hand dismissively. You are overthinking this. Besides, I would have to manage a cleaning service. Tell them what to do, check their work. That would just create more work for me. That is when it started to click. She didn't just want me to do the work. She wanted to avoid any responsibility whatsoever for household management. Vanessa, I am exhausted. I need help. I need you to step up and be a true partner in this marriage. Then manage your time better. Maybe wake up earlier or work faster. Other men handle full-time jobs and households without complaining. Other men have wives who contribute to the household labor. I do contribute. I handle the social calendar. I maintain our friendships. I make sure our home is beautiful and welcoming. Just because you cannot see the value in emotional labor doesn't mean it is not work. You tell me we have plans, and expect me to handle all the logistics. That is not the same thing. Fine, but I do other things. I choose our home decor. I plan our vacations. Vanessa, you pick out throw pillows and tell me which hotel you want to stay at. I handle the booking, the itinerary, the travel arrangements, the packing, everything else. She was getting frustrated now. Why are you attacking everything I do? I work hard to make our life beautiful and meaningful. Just because it is not the kind of work you value doesn't mean it is worthless. I am not attacking what you do. I am asking you to also do some of what I do, or at least acknowledge that what I do has value too. Of course, it has value. I appreciate everything you do. I tell you that all the time. When do you tell me that? Another pause. I show appreciation in other ways. Do you actually love me? Or do you love what I do for you? Her face went red. That is a horrible thing to ask. Of course I love you. I chose to marry you. But why did you choose me? What drew you to me? She smiled, like the answer was obvious. Because you are reliable, hardworking, and responsible. You take care of things so I don't have to worry. You make my life easier and more comfortable. Not because you are funny or because we have great conversations or because you make me happy, Because I make her life easier. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So if I stopped making your life easier, would you still want to be married to me? Why would you stop? That is like asking if I had still love you if you became a different person entirely. But you have become a different person since we got married. You used to be independent. You had your own apartment, paid your own bills, handled your own responsibilities. That was different. I was single then. Marriage is supposed to be about specialization and efficiency. We each play to our strengths. What are your strengths in this marriage? Specifically, she looked annoyed. I already told you. I handle the emotional and social aspects. I am the face of our relationship. I make our home beautiful. I keep myself attractive and interesting for you. Those aren't strengths, Vanessa. Those are hobbies you have convinced yourself are jobs. The conversation ended abruptly when she announced she had to get ready for girls' night out. I cannot talk about this anymore tonight, she said. You are being unreasonable and hurtful. And I need space to process this. I spent the evening doing 3 loads of laundry. Yes, we have a washing machine, but it has been broken for a week and I haven't had time to fix it yet. Meal prep for the week. And fixing a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, while she posted Instagram stories about cocktails and much-needed girl time. Mason came over for a beer afterward and listened to me recap the whole conversation. Dude, he smiled when I finished. You are not her husband. You are her employee, and she is not even a good boss because she doesn't pay you or give you benefits. But she says she loves me. She loves what you do for her. That is not the same thing as loving you. His wife Sarah joined us after putting their kids to bed my home, like, seriously sick. For an extended period, I thought about it. I guess everything would fall apart. She would have to figure out how to handle things herself. And how do you think she would react to that? Probably with a lot of stress and resentment. Right? That is not how someone reacts when their partner is sick. That is how someone reacts when their service provider is unavailable. Sarah continued. When Mason had his appendix out last year, I didn't resent having to take over his usual responsibilities. I was worried about his health and happy to carry extra weight until he recovered. That is what partners do. I have been thinking about that conversation for weeks now. The more I think about it, the more I realize Vanessa has never seen our marriage as a partnership. She sees it as a beneficial arrangement where she gets financial security, domestic service, and social status in exchange for existing, I guess. I am starting to understand why I am so exhausted. It is not just the workload. It is the complete lack of appreciation, reciprocity, or acknowledgement that I am a human being with my own needs and limitations. She doesn't just fail to help, she actively expects to be served, and she has convinced herself that her expectations are reasonable, and my exhaustion is a personal failing. I am considering some significant changes to how I operate around here. Not sure exactly what yet, but something fundamental needs to shift. Update 2. Well, Reddit. I took the advice from many of you and implemented what some called strategic withdrawal. I decided to stop enabling Vanessa's learned helplessness and see what happens when she has to face reality. But first, let me tell you about Mason's wife Sarah's conversation with Vanessa. It didn't go well. Sarah invited Vanessa for coffee and tried to gently explain how partnerships work in healthy marriages. According to Sarah, Vanessa listened politely for about 10 minutes before interrupting. I appreciate your concern, Vanessa told her, but Elias and I have a different dynamic that works for us. Just because you and Mason chose to blur traditional gender roles doesn't mean every marriage has to work that way. Elias is fulfilled by taking care of our home, and I am fulfilled by creating beauty and maintaining our social connections. Sarah tried to explain that I seemed stressed and overwhelmed, not fulfilled. Elias is just going through a phase, Vanessa replied. Men sometimes get insecure about their masculinity and start questioning whether they are doing enough. It is actually quite common. He will work through it. When Sarah suggested that I might need more support and appreciation, Vanessa got defensive. I support Elias constantly. I make our home a peaceful refuge from his stressful job. I don't nag him about money or complain about his long hours. I maintain my appearance and stay interesting, so he has a wife he can be proud of. That is more support than most men get. Sarah came back and told me the whole conversation. She is not going to change, she said. She genuinely believes she is already doing enough, and that you are the problem for being unhappy with the arrangement. That is when I decided to try the strategic withdrawal approach. It started small. I stopped doing Vanessa's laundry, explaining I only did my own now. She protested the washing machine was complicated, so I showed her the basics. Don't ask me how she did her laundry before we got married. Honestly, I don't know either. She looked at it like it was a nuclear reactor, but eventually figured it out. Next, I stopped handling her family obligations. When her mom called asking why no one showed up to drive her to the dentist, I handed the phone to Vanessa. She was furious afterward, complaining I had a flexible schedule and was better at logistics. The real drama started when I stopped doing dishes that weren't mine. Within a week, we had no clean dishes, and she was eating takeout off paper plates. The breaking point came when she invited her book club over without consulting me. Instead of my usual routine of shopping, cooking, and hosting, I made plans to go fishing with Mason. Elias, where are you going? I have 8 people coming over. The same person who invited them without asking if I was available to do all the work can handle it. When I returned that evening, the house was chaos, pizza boxes, paper plates, and a stressed, sweaty Vanessa on the verge of tears. She screamed that it was all my fault. I didn't embarrass you, I said. You embarrassed yourself by promising something you couldn't deliver. I shouldn't have to deliver anything. That is what husbands are for. And there it was. The truth she had been dancing around for months. I wasn't a partner in her mind. I was a service provider, whose job was to make her life effortless. When I pressed her on what she thought marriage roles should be, she explained that husbands handle practical things while wives provide emotional support and inspiration. When I asked if she actually did those things for me, she insisted she did by maintaining her appearance and not complaining about my work hours. Not complaining isn't the same as contributing, I told her. That is when Mason's wife Sarah called. She had heard about the dinner party disaster from one of the book club members. Elias, I need to tell you what really happened tonight. Vanessa spent the whole evening complaining about you. She told her friends that you refused to do your job as a husband, and that she was stuck with a defective provider who doesn't understand his role in marriage, like I am an appliance that malfunctioned. She also said you have been acting out because you are insecure, and that she is considering whether she can afford to keep a husband who will not fulfill his basic duties. Afford to keep. Like I am a service she is paying for. I hung up feeling completely numb. It wasn't just that Vanessa saw me as a service provider. She had been telling other people that my worth as a husband was dependent on my willingness to serve her. I am done, Reddit. Not just with doing everything, but with the marriage itself. Malfunctioning appliance instead of a human being. Isn't someone I can build a life with. Final update. I am writing this final update from my new apartment. And I honestly cannot remember the last time I felt this peaceful. Her reaction was, something to behold. Divorce. Over what? Because I don't want to be your maid. No, Vanessa. Because you wanted me to be yours. I had already consulted a lawyer and had the papers ready. The look on her face when she realized I was completely serious was like watching someone see a car accident happening in slow motion. Elias. Wait. We can work this out. I can help more around the house. It is not about the house anymore, Vanessa. It is about respect. You have spent our entire marriage treating me like hired help instead of your partner. That is not true. I love you. You love what I do for you. There is a difference. No, I love you. I chose to marry you. Why? Why did you choose to marry me? And don't say because I make your life easier. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched for almost a minute. Because you are a good man. You are reliable and caring and I take care of everything so you don't have to worry about anything. More silence. Vanessa, when you think about me, what do you think about? What makes you happy about being married to me? You make me feel secure, safe, like I don't have to worry about practical things. Do you think about my personality, my sense of humor, the conversations we have, things we enjoy doing together? She looked genuinely confused by the question. Well, yes, of course. Like what? What is the last conversation we had that wasn't about logistics or household management? Another long pause. We talk about lots of things. Name one. She couldn't, because we didn't. Our entire relationship had devolved into her making requests and me fulfilling them. The next few weeks were illuminating. Suddenly, Vanessa was very interested in learning how to manage household tasks, pay bills, and handle responsibilities. But it wasn't because she had had some epiphany about partnership. It was because she was panicking about having to do everything herself. She went through the classic stages of grief, but applied to losing a service provider, denial. This is just a phase. Bargaining. What if I hire a housekeeper? Anger. You are abandoning your responsibilities as a husband. And finally, manipulation. I will tell everyone you left me because I wouldn't be your slave. The manipulation phase was particularly ugly. She started telling friends and family that I was divorcing her because she stood up for herself and refused to be a 1950s housewife. She painted herself as a feminist hero who was being punished for having boundaries. Thankfully, Mason's wife Sarah had already talked to several people in our social circle about what our marriage actually looked like, so most people saw through Vanessa's narrative pretty quickly. My sister-in-law, Jessica, who had been at the disastrous book club dinner, actually called me to apologize. Elias, I owe you an apology. I always thought Vanessa was so lucky to have a husband who was so involved at home. I didn't realize she was doing literally nothing, and then bragging about it. When she told us you were acting out and refusing to do your job, I started to understand what was really happening. It took me a long time to see it too, I told her. The night of that dinner party was eye-opening. Watching her try to host when you weren't there to do everything. It was like watching someone try to perform a job they would never actually learn. And then the way she talked about you afterward, like you were a defective employee, it was honestly disgusting. But the real wake-up call for Vanessa came when she had to start handling everything I used to do. The learning curve was brutal. Within 2 weeks, she was constantly stressed and calling me for help with basic things, like paying bills online. She had to cancel social activities because she was busy with household tasks. Her part-time job started suffering because she was exhausted and distracted. The house was a disaster despite her efforts. Bills were late. Her parents were upset about missed appointments, and her social life had disappeared. She was finally experiencing the sheer mental load I had been carrying. Not just physical tasks, but remembering everything, planning ahead, managing schedules and deadlines. I had no idea. She told me during our divorce negotiations, I thought you just did a few chores after work. I didn't realize how much mental energy it takes to manage everything. Now you know what the last 3 years felt like for me. I am sorry, Elias. I really am. I took you for granted. I didn't understand how much you were doing or how hard you were working. You are only sorry because you are experiencing consequences. Vanessa, you had years to notice my exhaustion, my stress, my requests for help. You chose to ignore all of it because it was convenient. But I understand now. I see how wrong I was. Can we try again? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Vanessa, you understand that managing a household is work. You still don't understand that I am a person who deserves consideration and respect. Yes, I do. I see that now. No. You see that I was providing valuable services that you now have to pay for or do yourself. You are not sorry about how you treated me as a person. You are sorry about losing your personal assistant. That is not fair, isn't it? If I told you right now that I would come back and resume doing everything I used to do, but our emotional relationship would stay exactly the same as it was, would you take that deal? She hesitated just long enough to prove my point. I see, I said. You miss what I did for you, not who I am. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. Vanessa got the house but had to buy out my equity, which left her house poor and financially stressed. I kept my retirement accounts, my car, and most of our savings. Here is what my life looks like now. I moved into a nice 1-bedroom apartment, 15 minutes closer to work. My commute is shorter, so I have more time for myself. I work my normal 8-hour days because I am not constantly exhausted anymore. I have energy for creative projects and focused work. I meal prep on Sundays, just for me, exactly how I like it. I keep my place clean as I go because it is just me making messes. I have time for hobbies again. I am reading books, learning guitar, taking photography classes. I sleep 8 hours a night in a bed I make, just for myself. I wake up naturally instead of to alarm clocks because I am actually getting rest. I have lost the stress weight and gotten back into excellent shape. I feel better physically than I have in years. Most importantly, I remember what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not what I do. I have been dating someone new for the past 6 weeks. A software developer named Rachel, who has her own apartment, pays her own bills, handles her own life, like a competent adult. Our first date was coffee. When I offered to pay, she said, "I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to split it. I don't like feeling indebted to people I don't know well yet." When we went to dinner the second time, she insisted on paying because you got coffee last time. When I offered to fix a leaky faucet at her place, she said, "That is really sweet of you to offer, but I already called a plumber, want to grab lunch instead." It was the sexiest thing anyone had ever said to me. Not because she rejected my help, but because she took care of her own problems without expecting me to solve them. Rachel and I cook together when we have dinner at each other's places. We both clean. We both plan activities. When one of us is tired or stressed, the other picks up more of the load temporarily. It is what partnership actually looks like. I cannot imagine expecting someone else to handle all the practical aspects of my life. She told me when I shared some stories about my marriage. How exhausting would it be to go through life feeling helpless about basic adulting tasks? Meanwhile, I hear through mutual friends that Vanessa is struggling significantly. She had to quit her part-time job because she couldn't handle working and managing a household. Then she couldn't afford the house payments without my income. So she had to sell it and move into a smaller apartment. Her social circle has shrunk dramatically because she doesn't have time to maintain friendships when she is busy with basic life maintenance. Several people have commented that she seems bitter and resentful all the time. Now she tried dating a few months after our divorce was finalized. But apparently it is not going well. According to Jessica, men her age expect women to be self-sufficient. And Vanessa keeps looking for someone to take over the role I used to play. She went on a date with this guy Mark, Jessica told me, and within an hour she was talking about how stressful it is to handle her own finances and how she needs a man who understands that women require more support. The guy literally got up and left. Part of me feels bad for her, but mostly I feel relieved that I am not responsible for managing her life anymore.
AITA for telling my fiance's mom to shut the hell up at our engagement dinner? I swear to God, I didn't plan to yell at anyone that night. It was supposed to be a celebration. We'd just gotten engaged a week before. I proposed to my girlfriend Olivia on the coast of Monterey, right in front of that goofy sandcastle guy who always plays Radiohead on a violin. She cried. I cried. It was perfect. And then came the dinner. Her family wanted to officially celebrate, so they invited us to dinner at this old-school Italian restaurant in Pasadena called Celestino's. Her parents, her 2 older sisters, the pretty one and the one who thinks she's the pretty one, a cousin who didn't say one word the entire night, and us. My parents weren't invited. Too soon to blend families, her mom said. Red flag? Maybe. I ignored it. We get there, everyone's fake smiling, and the first glass of wine hasn't even been poured before her mom, Janice, starts in. First, it's small digs. "Oh, wow, you wore that jacket? Interesting choice proposing in California." We always pictured Olivia getting engaged in Tuscany. I kept my mouth shut. Olivia gave me a little "I'm sorry" squeeze under the table, but it didn't stop. When the waitress came and Olivia ordered the gnocchi, her mom legit said, "Are you sure?" "You've been doing so well with your diet." Olivia turned red and changed her order. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Then came the speech. Janice clinks her wine glass. "Everyone, I just want to say a few words." I kid you not, she pulls out a folded paper, like she was giving a TED Talk. She starts off with some stuff about how marriage is serious and how some people rush into it. Then she deadass looks at me and says, "Some men say all the right things to win the girl, but time always shows the truth." I looked around thinking surely someone, her dad, her sister, a random waiter, would say something. Nope, dead silent. Olivia sat there frozen. Her mouth opened like she was about to say something, but nothing came out. So I snapped. I leaned forward and said loudly that Janice, shut the hell up, and every fork in that restaurant stopped moving. It was like the entire staff collectively clenched. Her dad choked on his breadstick. The cousin looked up for the first time all night. Janice's jaw dropped. And then Olivia burst into tears and ran out. I didn't follow her. I just sat there, like an idiot. Janice looked so smug, like I proved her point or something. I paid the bill and left. Drove home alone. Olivia hasn't responded to my texts in 2 days. Her sister texted me last night. Congrats, you just embarrassed her entire family. Am I the asshole? Was I too harsh? Or was I just the first person to finally say what everyone's been thinking for years? So, Olivia doesn't talk to me for 2 full days. Not a word. No hey, no, we need to talk, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. On day 3, she texts, can we talk at my place? Just us. I go over there, nervous as hell. She opens the door, eyes puffy, still beautiful but cold. She doesn't hug me, doesn't even sit down, just says, why did you do that? And I'm like, what? You mean why did I defend you from your mom roasting you in front of everyone like she was doing a stand-up set at my expense? But I don't say that. I just say, because no one else was going to. She lets out this laugh, not a funny laugh, more like a, you don't get it laugh. She says, you think this is about that dinner? That's just how she is. Oh, really? That's just how she is. I finally sit down and go, Olivia, your mom literally body shamed you, belittled me, hijacked your engagement dinner to give a speech about how I'm fake, and you think I'm the problem? And she just says, yeah, because I asked you not to escalate. I begged you not to respond to her. She's right, she did. A week before dinner, she warned me. My mom pushes. Just let it slide, please. Still, I ask, why? Why protect her when she treats you like that? And here's the twist I didn't see coming. She sits next to me, finally, and tells me the whole backstory. Apparently, when Olivia was in high school, she gained a lot of weight after her parents' divorce. Her mom never let her forget it, started locking the pantry, hid the snacks, told relatives Olivia was in her awkward phase. When Olivia made varsity soccer, Janice said, good, maybe you'll burn some of that off. She also said, and this made me see red, you're never gonna get a ring looking like that. Fast forward to college. Olivia dropped weight, got super fit. Her mom suddenly turned into this proud peacock, posting side-by-sides glow-up stuff on Facebook. It became her identity to have a hot daughter. Olivia tells me, every time I pushed back, she made me feel like I was the problem. If I snapped, I was ungrateful. If I cried, I was too sensitive. So eventually I just stopped reacting. That's when it clicked. She didn't freeze at the dinner because she agreed with her mom. She froze because that's what her mom trained her to do. And I messed with the formula. I did what she never could. I barked back. I said, Liv, I didn't know. But I'm not sorry I said it. Someone had to. She looked at me for a long time and whispered, I just wish it hadn't been you. Dagger. Right in the gut. Then she added something I'll never forget. Now she wins. She gets to say, look how he talks to women. And, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Because the next morning I got a DM from Olivia's older sister, the one who thinks she's the pretty one. She sends me a screenshot of a family group chat I obviously wasn't supposed to see. Janice. Well, I guess we know what kind of man he is. Loud, rude, controlling Olivia's Aunt Carol. Poor Liv. Hope she doesn't go through with it. Her dad, read message deleted. Like, even he didn't want to co-sign Janice's energy. But he's not saying anything either. And now I'm stuck. Olivia's talking to me, but there's this weird distance. Her family's gone full smear campaign. And the wedding? We haven't even mentioned it again. It's like we both just hit pause on the whole engagement. So Olivia and I are stuck in this awkward limbo. We're technically still engaged, but no one's talking about wedding venues anymore. No dress appointments, no catering calls. It's like we just silently deleted the Google Sheet and pretended it never existed. I can't take the weirdness anymore. I decide I'm going to try and fix this. Or at least, attempt a ceasefire with Janice. Do I want to talk to her? Absolutely not. But I figure if I can eat a little humble pie and show Olivia that I'm trying, maybe we can get things back on track. So I text Janice. Yes, me. I texted the woman who basically did a live roast of me over calamari. Me. Hey Janice, could we meet for coffee? I'd like to clear the air. Just you and me. Her. Wow. This is unexpected. Sure unexpected? Lady, you started a war. We meet at a Starbucks near her yoga studio. She shows up in Lululemon and full makeup, like she's walking into a photo shoot, not a truce negotiation. Doesn't even say hi, just slides into the seat and says, so, you're ready to apologize? I blink. Yeah, I mean, for how I said it. Not what I said, wrong move. She narrows her eyes like I just said her Botox looked uneven. So you're not sorry for telling me to shut the hell up in front of my family? I say, I'm sorry for how it came out, but Janice, you were really out of line. You humiliated Olivia. You disrespected me. That wasn't just a few words, it was a full character assassination with breadsticks. She leans back and sips her latte like it's wine. Then she hits me with this. You're not who I pictured Olivia marrying. You're too rough around the edges. No pedigree, no class. You're not cultured? What does she think this is, Bridgerton? So now I'm pissed. But I keep my cool, barely. I say, Janice, I love your daughter. That should matter more than where I went to school or what fork I use. She goes, love isn't enough. Trust me. Then she pulls out the emotional nuke. You know she was supposed to marry someone else, right? I freeze. You know, Zach, the one she dated for 5 years. God, we all loved Zach. Zach, ladies and gentlemen, is her ex-boyfriend from college. I knew about him. What I didn't know is that Janice still keeps in touch with the guy. Apparently, he sent her a Christmas card last year. I say, what's your point, Janice? She shrugs, smiling like a cat in heat. Just that some people are a better fit. That's all. This woman is in love with her daughter's ex. I don't even finish my drink. I just say, thanks for your time, and bounce. I tell Olivia everything that happened. Her face goes pale. She says, she talked about Zach? In person? Yeah, brought him up like he's still on the table. Olivia starts crying, not little tears, like full-on gasping for air. I can't do this anymore tears. She goes, I've tried for years to get her to stop bringing him up. She used to send me photos of him with his new fiancée saying things like, see how well they match? I thought she'd stopped. I thought... She just keeps shaking her head. I tell her, you don't have to marry me to spite her. And she goes, I'm not. But I can't marry you while she's like this. It'll ruin everything. So I ask her the question I never wanted to ask. Is this a breakup? She doesn't say yes. She doesn't say no. She just whispers, I don't know. So after that Starbucks ambush, things got heavy. Olivia stopped coming over. We weren't officially broken up, but we were very much paused. It felt like someone hit mute on our relationship and lost the remote. Then 2 weeks later, she calls and says, I've made a decision. Can you come over tonight? My gut's twisting. I'm thinking, this is it. She's ending it. Janice wins, but when I walk into her apartment, it's not what I expected. She's not crying. She's calm, focused. I talk to my mom, she says, here we go. And I told her she's not invited to the wedding. Wait, what? I blink. Wait, you what? She nods, tears in her eyes, but this time they're angry tears. I told her she doesn't get to treat you like that and still sit front row while I marry you. I sit down because I think my knees are going to bail on me. She continues, she screamed, cried, said I was turning my back on family, that I was letting a man corrupt me. She even tried to guilt trip me about my childhood, told me she sacrificed everything for me. Then she said if I go through with this wedding without her, I'm dead to her. I ask, and you still want to do this? She looks me dead in the eye and says, I want to marry you. Not her opinion. We hug. I cry. I'm not even ashamed. I'd been holding my breath for weeks and finally, it felt like Olivia was choosing me. And then came the real chaos. Next day, we announce it to the group chat. Weddings back on, dates set, and due to recent events, only positive family energy is welcome. Her dad texts her separately, says he wants to come, says he respects her choice, which is code for I'm not getting in the middle of that. But then her sister, the one who thinks she's hot, posts this on her Instagram story. Some people cut off their mother to please a man who told her to shut up at dinner. But go off, queen. And guess who likes the post? Zach. Yup, Olivia's ex. Apparently he and Janice weren't just still in touch. They were DM buddies. Homeboy even messaged her after our engagement dinner saying, I always knew he wasn't it. What the hell? I show Olivia the screenshots. Her face goes numb. She doesn't even say anything. Just picks up her phone, calls her sister, puts it on speaker and says, you talk to Zach, don't you? Dead silence. Then her sister laughs and goes, you're seriously doing this right now? How long? Another beat of silence. Since the breakup. It wasn't a big deal. Mom liked him. We stayed friends. Jesus, Liv. Don't make this about you. Olivia hangs up, dead quiet for a minute. Then she says, my mom wanted me to marry Zach. My sister low-key still does. The only person in that family who's ever actually supported me was my cousin, and he's too shy to say anything out loud. She turns to me and says, I'm done. I don't care if it's 10 people at the wedding. I'm done playing nice with people who would rather I be miserable than independent. I've never seen her look stronger. The next week, we moved the wedding to a smaller venue, backyard style, string lights, food truck. My mom cried when she found out we were going through with it. Janice tried one last time. She sent a handwritten letter. No apology, just, I'll always be your mother. You'll regret this, Olivia threw it out without reading past the first line. We didn't have a big wedding, no fancy ballroom, no DJ playing Bruno Mars, but we did have people who clapped when we kissed, not people who judged our cake flavor. So the wedding happens. It's not what we originally planned. No cathedral, no choreographed first dance, no wine list that needs its own sommelier, but it was ours. We rented this cute little spot up in Ojai with string lights over a long table, a taco truck parked in the gravel, and a playlist Olivia made on Spotify called Absolutely No Ed Sheeran. About 30 people came. My family, a few of her cousins, some close friends. Her dad showed up, alone, said maybe 3 words the whole time, but at least he didn't bring the damn drama. Janice? Not invited. Sister? Not invited. Zach? Well, I thought he wasn't invited. Yeah, we'll get to that. The wedding was perfect. Olivia walked barefoot down this little stone path to a cover of Can't Help Falling in Love, and I swear every thought I had about her toxic family just disappeared. We said I do under a sycamore tree, and for the first time in months, it felt like we weren't under anyone's microscope. We kissed, everyone cheered, someone's kid started crying, and I didn't care. It was real. It was messy. It was perfect. A year later, we're married, happy, even talking about maybe getting a dog, until one day I come home and Olivia's sitting at the kitchen table looking like she's seen a ghost. Guess who emailed me, she says. Number, please no. Zach. Yep, that's Zach. Apparently he reached out because, wait for it, he's getting married, and he wants to invite Olivia. I laughed thinking she's joking. She's not. He said, she reads off her phone, I always felt like we had unfinished business. I'm with someone great now, but I'd love for you to be there. I think it would mean a lot to both of us. I swear I stared at her like she'd just told me she wanted to adopt a raccoon. You're not actually considering going, right? I ask. She goes, of course not. But I'm replying, I watch her type this response in real time. Zach, I hope your wedding is beautiful. But let's be honest. You don't want me there for closure. You want me there to validate your life choices. I don't need that. I have what I want. Please do not contact me again. Olivia send. Block done. But guess who forwarded the invite to Zach's wedding to Olivia 2 days later? Janice. No message, just the forwarded email, not even a subject line. Olivia doesn't reply, doesn't rant, just shows it to me and deletes it. Then she says, I think she's going to be this petty until she dies. I say, cool. She can be petty in her group chat with Zach. We laughed about it over pizza and beer, and for the first time since that nightmare dinner at Celestino's, we both felt 100% aligned. So, was I the asshole? People still ask me that, especially the ones who weren't at the wedding. They've heard different versions of the story. Some say I disrespected a mother. Others say I stood up for my fiancé. Here's what I know. I loved someone who'd been gaslit her entire life. And when I snapped, it wasn't perfect. But it broke something. In a good way. It cracked the glass she'd been living behind. And once that crack formed, she saw things clearly. Not just her mom, her sister, even herself. So no. I don't regret telling Janice to shut the hell up, not even a little bit. But I do wish Olivia had gotten there on her own, without needing me to burn down the bridge. Some people are taught their whole lives that silence equals peace. That being a good daughter means swallowing pain so the room stays calm. But sometimes peace starts with someone flipping the damn table. And if I had to be that guy, fine by me. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.
Blocked my fiancé's jealous sister for her toxic outburst against our engagement. Now she's banned from the wedding and facing family fallout. I, 25F, have been with my now fiancé, 26 male, for a little over a year. He proposed to me back in early March, and ever since I have felt that my sister-in-law, SIL, 23F, has begun to dislike me. I found out that a few days before my fiancé proposed, my sister-in-law, SIL, overheard the conversation he was having with my mill about my ring and the proposal and completely exploded on him. She told him how it was too soon and that she was supposed to be the one to get engaged first. My fiancé and I had many conversations about marriage, and we felt getting engaged after a year was perfect for us. My Sil has been with her boyfriend, 21 male, for a little over 2 years. I didn't say anything to her about this because I didn't think it was my place, and I figured his family would have a conversation with her. Apparently there was a conversation, but when she texted my fiancé later, she basically told him that she was happy for him but was still standing firm on how she felt. Fast forward to June. I have been wanting to talk to her about why there's been a shift in her behavior towards me but didn't know how. She shot me down when I asked if she wanted to come wedding dress shopping in May. She watches all of my stuff on Instagram but never likes anything, and she's never told me congratulations. I decided yesterday to reach out to her, and when I did I prefaced that I wasn't trying to attack her or argue. I just wanted to have an open conversation about how she's feeling. I genuinely wish that I would have just left it alone, because she quite literally exploded on me. She told me that I've been disrespectful and dismissive of her boyfriend and parents on multiple occasions. She then went on to insinuate that I was probably going to divorce her brother and break his heart, and that she would be the one to pick up all the pieces and lift him up in life. And finished it off by confirming that she does talk about me behind my back because she hasn't seen me in her house to confront me. I responded to all of her points, just expressing that I've never been disrespectful, and her saying those things about her brother and I were heartbreaking. I also reiterated that we are different ages, so what makes sense for us probably won't always make sense for her. She then doubled down while beginning to curse at me and said that we have a higher chance of getting divorced since I wanted to rush into marriage, and the only reason I wanted to get engaged was because I heard her and her boyfriend argue about it 24/7. Just to preface, my fiancé and I got engaged after a year and will be getting married after 2 years. We will also be living together starting in December. She was really upset about the age thing and even said that I accused her boyfriend of bringing another girl home. The conversation was me asking if he had a sister, since neither myself nor my fiancé knew who she was, and once she confirmed that was the end of the conversation. She called me delusional and weird and finished off her message by saying my point is I'm only going to the wedding to support my brother. I immediately blocked her on everything because I felt the entire thing was toxic. I told my fiancé that I don't want her at the wedding because there's no way she thinks she can speak to me like this and still think she's invited. I've even been considering trashing the micro-wedding idea and just eloping. I also sent the entire conversation to my mill because I didn't want there to be any question on if what I was saying was true or just me twisting words. Now because of this, my mill told them both, my fiancé and Sil, that they have to come over next week for a family meeting, so I'll see how that goes. Part of me is upset that I even said anything because I genuinely wanted to resolve this whole thing, but the other half is happy because now I know what I've been feeling this whole time wasn't just in my head. Anyways, Ida? Update 1. I won't be present for the family meeting, which I honestly think is best. She has issues with change and I think she's used to being the center of attention a lot of the time, so I think having a one-on-one conversation with her parents and my fiancé without me there will hopefully be good. I'll find out next Tuesday evening what all went down, though I think my mill called the meeting because she sees through the conversation that I had with her daughter. There's no way for me to get through to her. Me being present would honestly just make her more angry than actually get to the bottom of what the heck is going on. Just from the conversation I tried to have with her, she was jumping from point to point, and when I would question it, she would bring up something completely different. I also told her I'm not comfortable being in the same room as her, so that could also be playing a part. I hope me sending the screenshots helped to really put her on the spot because she can't deny any of it. Update 2. Anyways, they had their family meeting at the beginning of July and I was not present for this. My fiancé filled me in on a lot of what was said, and in my opinion it went better than I expected. It went better in the sense that my in-laws tried to put my Sil in my shoes. So there were a lot of questions of how would you feel if she said that to you, or how would you feel if someone was treating you this way. With these questions she had no real answer, so no real progress. There. To me that shows that she knows her behavior is bad enough that she wouldn't want to be treated that way, but not enough that she understands that she shouldn't treat me that way or anyone else. My fiancé told me that my mill told her if she said to choose between her fiancé/future and her piece of you-know-what sister, she would choose her fiancé every time. They even asked my Sil if it was reversed and my fiancé was treating her that way, what would she choose, and she immediately said, her boyfriend. So again, there's an understanding that she would never want to be treated that way, but not enough to not do it to others. I was told that my in-laws were and still are upset about the situation, so they were addressing her behavior, but I'm not sure how extensively. I know there are probably a lot of other details that I'm not aware of simply because I wasn't there, and my fiancé tried his best to relay everything back to me. At the end of the conversation, my in-laws asked if I would be willing to sit down with everyone and have a conversation on how we can move forward. Initially, I was extremely hesitant this was a sign, but eventually I decided it could possibly be a good thing and we could potentially move forward, although I was still standing firm and not wanting her at the wedding. My Sil wanted to wait until her boyfriend got back, so we had to wait for that. Fast forward to last Thursday, my fiancé told me that my Sil texted him saying they were doing a lunch on Sunday, yesterday, and that everyone was invited. I figured this was going to be the meeting that my in-laws were wanting to have. I told my fiancé that although I was pretty nervous about the whole thing, I was willing to go because I genuinely just wanted the whole thing to be done. It has taken a lot out of me emotionally and mentally, and so I was ready to find a way to move forward. So we get there, my fiancé and Sil's shared apartment, and I will admit that it was awkward. I felt like I was going to throw up before we walked in from the anxiety, so I was not having a good time. I spoke to everyone and hugged my in-laws, but I didn't speak to my Sil, mainly because I didn't know if she was take it poorly and I also didn't really want to. My Sil's boyfriend, Absolute Angel, cooked lunch, which was really nice, and so for a bit things were calm and I was getting a little more relaxed, but not 100%. After lunch was when the talk/meeting started. My in-laws basically mediated the whole thing. A lot of the main points were they wanted things to get figured out so it wouldn't always be like this. They didn't want it to be uncomfortable for anyone. They want to be able to get together for holidays and other things, especially since kids will be in the picture sooner or later. Most of the time my Sil wasn't really interested in the conversation, but once she was, it kinda just went downhill. A lot of her responses were I'm not sorry, I said what I said, she started it by sending me that long message. She made some comments about how she was being nice because she didn't start anything when I came in the house, which made me feel like I couldn't really speak up. Like it was a warning that she was being nice but that she could flip at any moment. Anything that my in-laws said was met with pretty much the same response of I said what I said. There was a lot of I don't want to be her best friend even though no one even mentioned that or asked her to, and she even told my mill that she didn't want to share her family with anyone. My Sil's boyfriend chimed in at one point and brought up how I sent that message right when they were going through a bad rough patch, which I didn't know because it's not my business, but even with that happening it doesn't excuse her behavior at all. It ultimately came to a destructive end when my Phil brought how he would hope that eventually we could be on good terms and that things might change. My Sil said I mean okay yeah eventually things could change but right now I don't like this F-by. I can't even tell you what everyone said after that because I was in full-blown panic mode and had tunnel vision. I do remember my mill wow insert Sil's name, but that's about it. I left and went into my fiancé bedroom because I had just reached my limit and I cried. After that my fiancé and Sil got into a screaming match and I could hear my in-laws chiming in but then my Sil started crying. I found out later this was because she felt like everyone was attacking her. My fiancé eventually came in to check on me and told me that we could leave. He just wanted me to take a moment to breathe and catch my breath. We talked for a bit and then my mill asked to come in. She profusely apologized to me and although it's her daughter, she's still technically a grown woman and is responsible for her own actions. I explained to her that I don't know that I've done something wrong unless it's communicated to me, and the only reason I really knew that I had done something was because I texted her trying to communicate and it was taken poorly. I said that I had no ill intent whatsoever with sending the message although I do understand how some things could have been taken negatively or as a dig on her end. I told both my fiancé and Mill that if I had any idea that this was how things were going to go, I would have never said anything. I told her I appreciated the thought of trying to help the situation but at this point there was nothing I could say or do that would make the situation better and I didn't feel comfortable staying, so we left. It's a hot mess and it honestly sucks that this is how it played out, but that's where things are at the moment and probably will stay for quite a while so it is what it is. It goes without saying that she definitely won't be at the wedding and now we're trying to decide if we want just our parents there or if we just want it to be the two of us. Update 3. It has been a couple weeks since that lunch where everything imploded and I honestly thought that would be the bottom, but it turns out the bottom has a basement. The day after we left, my fiancé called his sister and told her very calmly that she was not invited to the wedding and that until there was a real, unprompted apology and some consistent change, he couldn't keep pretending things were okay. She laughed. Actually laughed and said you're seriously choosing her over blood? And he said I'm choosing my peace. She told him he was dramatic and hung up. He blocked her. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and stayed like that for 3 days. His mom tried again in the gap that followed. She asked my fiancé to come over for dinner the next Thursday, just the four of us, her, Phil, Sil, and him, because she wanted them to hear each other without an audience. He went, and I stayed home and made pasta and stared at a wall. He came home with this look on his face that I hadn't seen before, some mix of angry and sad, and said the dinner was basically his parents trying to lay out how everything has escalated and his sister giggling and scrolling on her phone and then snapping up every few minutes with things like she weaponizes anxiety and I'm not the family villain because I don't want to be besties with a weirdo. He lasted 30 minutes, told his mom he loved her but he wasn't sitting there to be called names, and left. On his way out his sister yelled after him, "We'll see if she still wants you when she gets bored," which, okay. 2 days later I got a message from her boyfriend. He apologized for the lunch, he made the food and then had to sit there too, and said he was sorry he brought up their argument like it was a reason things blew up. He told me he's been pushing her to see someone because she is spiraling and he's tired. He also told me she had created a private Instagram and had been posting about me there for months, screenshots of my posts, my captions, even clips of my engagement video with captions like lol cringe. I wouldn't have seen it, but his cousin is on it and sent him a couple screenshots after the lunch and asked is she okay? He didn't send them to me, I told him please don't, but he said the point of telling me was so I didn't feel like I was imagining the malice. I cried for the weirdest reason after that, not because I was hurt, it's the internet, whatever, but because it suddenly made sense why I felt like I was walking into a trap all the time. It wasn't paranoia, there was actually a trap. After that we made a decision. We would get married quietly and legally soon and then do the bigger party later with friends when this isn't hanging over us. We told our parents that we wanted just the four of them at the courthouse and then a nice lunch. No siblings. No cousins. No surprises. His mom cried, his dad said whatever gives you peace. My mom asked for a color to wear and then brought me tulips. I bought a simple white slip dress and did my own hair in the mirror and felt like myself for the first time in weeks. We got the license and circled a date. We didn't tell anyone the date except our parents. We asked them not to tell anyone the date, especially his sister. We told them we didn't even want congratulations posts that day because we wanted to be ghosts. Everything was going exactly like that until the night before when I made the fatal mistake of using Find My to see what time. My fiancé was getting home from the gym because we were finishing our vows and I was pacing. I hadn't thought about the fact that he still shared his location with his family because they grew up doing that. He disabled it, but I had a pit in my stomach anyway. The morning of, my anxiety did a weird thing where it felt like it moved out of my body and was just floating next to me, watching. I put on my dress, he put on his suit, our parents met us in the lobby of the courthouse with flowers, and we went through security. We were waiting for the clerk to call our name when his mom's face just fell. She showed me her phone. It said I'm downstairs. I didn't even have to see the name. My fiancé and his dad walked out to the front and there she was in the middle of the lobby in a white sundress with giant sunglasses on like it was a bit. She told them you can't legally bar me, it's a courthouse and my fiancé said you're not coming in. She called me budget Meghan Markle and tried to walk around him. He stepped in front of her. It got loud enough that security looked over. His mom went outside and stood between her and the door and told her if she loved her brother she would go home. She said you made me like this. You're the reason he thinks this is normal and it was the first time I saw his mom look like she might break. Security ended up asking her to leave the building. She wasn't arrested or anything, they just explained that it's a small ceremony space and they couldn't have drama in the lobby and that if she didn't have official business she needed to come back another time. She left after telling my fiancé he would regret this forever and ever and ever, which sounded like something a witch says in a fairy tale, but then she stood across the street on the corner and just watched. I could see her on the corner when we were in the little room with the clerk. I told the clerk I'm sorry, this is really embarrassing, and she said we see everything. You'd be surprised. We said our vows. My hands shook and I messed up my line once and started laughing and then crying at the same time. His dad sniffled and pretended he had allergies. My mom cried so hard she made me cry harder and there's a photo of me laughing with mascara on my cheeks and I don't even care because it's the happiest ugly photo I've ever had. When the clerk pronounced us, I felt something drop out of my spine, like I had been carrying weight I didn't know I'd agreed to carry. When we walked out, she was gone. I don't know if she left or if my mill texted her and told her we were finished and to please not ruin the only thing. We took pictures on the steps, went to a little Italian place that my dad and I used to go to when I was little, and had champagne. After we ate, my fiancé sent one photo to the family group chat and said we did it. We're married. Love you. We both turned off our phones and went to a hotel downtown and took a nap. When I turned my phone back on that night there were 100 messages. Most of them were from his mom and my mom with hearts and crying faces and some from cousins. 2 were from weird numbers that were obviously her because of the cadence. You stole my family and you're pathetic for hiding like a criminal. I blocked them. There were 2 long texts from her boyfriend. The first one said he was sorry she showed up and he didn't know she was going to and that he wasn't there because he didn't want to choose and then he wrote I know it's not about me, but I can't do this anymore. The second one said they were taking a break. Apparently she went home after being removed from the courthouse and called him 22 times in a row and when he didn't answer, she threw his cologne out the window. He sent my fiancé a photo of the shattered bottle on the sidewalk and my fiancé joked I hated that smell anyway, which is maybe the first time we joked about any of this. The next morning, my mill knocked on our hotel door with coffee and a little box. She gave me her wedding earrings. She said she had wanted to give them to me the morning of but obviously the morning went sideways and she didn't want the earrings to be part of that energy. I stared at her ears because she didn't have piercings anymore and she laughed and said she stopped wearing anything years ago because she lost one earring and it made her sad. She said I don't want you to think we aren't doing anything. We took her key. I didn't know she still had a key to my fiancé's place and the idea made me nauseous, but his mom had already driven to their apartment after lunch the day before and made his sister hand over the spare. His mom also told me she told her flat out that she doesn't get to talk about me in the house anymore and that if she starts, she will be ending phone calls. I know people say consequences and it sounds like parenting a toddler, but in that moment I was grateful someone was parenting the toddler. The weirdest wrinkle this week was a long apology text from his sister that read like it was written by a pastor.
It used words like contrition and breach in my heart posture and if you've ever gotten an apology that isn't an apology, you know the feeling. Your brain wants to accept it because the letters A, P, O, L, O, G, Y, are there, but your body knows there's no humility in it.
The part that tipped it over was I hope you can acknowledge the role you played in the breakdown of our relationship, followed by I'm willing to put this aside for the wedding. I stared at that sentence for a very long time because it said the quiet part out loud. For the wedding. Not because she's sorry. Because she wants in. I wrote back, thank you for reaching out. We got married yesterday. I wish you well. She called me a liar. Then she posted a black square to her private and wrote I lost my brother today. Her boyfriend posted a picture of his dog and turned his comments off. We're staying off social media for a minute. The sense of relief is strange because it isn't clean. It's relief braided with grief for something that could have been easy and wasn't. We went over to his parents' house for dinner 2 nights after and it felt normal. His mom made roast chicken. No one whispered about anything. His dad asked about our honeymoon plans and my mom texted pictures of a beach house she found for a weekend in September and sent a link where you can rent paddle boards and I realized at some point that I was telling a story about the clerk at the courthouse and laughing and I wasn't looking over my shoulder to see if someone was rolling their eyes. The absence of tension is its own presence. I did get one more message from her last night. It was a voice note that started with I went to therapy and then I don't think you deserve an apology, but my therapist said I should tell you I'm jealous. The word jealous coming out of her mouth was like a pebble dropping in a glass of water. It didn't fix anything, but it made a tiny sound and then the water settled around it. I didn't respond. I don't have anything else in me to give to this. Maybe she will keep going and the pebble will turn into something else. Maybe not. Right now my job is to be married to the person I love and to keep the door to our life closed enough that no one can throw cologne through it. We're going to do a little backyard barbecue at my parents' house in September. Friends, cousins, his parents, my grandparents, no speeches, no bouquet, just burgers and music and a Polaroid on the picnic table. If she shows up, she won't be let in. That's not a threat, it's just how it's going to be. He keeps saying he's proud of us for protecting our day. I keep saying I wish any of this wasn't necessary. Both things can be true. We're moving into our place in December and I'm painting the kitchen the light green we both liked, and I bought a set of cheap white plates and the silly little butter dish that looks like a cow. When I think about my life, it looks like that kitchen with the sun coming in and the butter cow on the counter and not a single person in the doorway telling me I'm a mistake. I don't know what the next chapter with her looks like. For now there is the smallest beginning of a boundary that doesn't wobble when it's touched. For now there's us, and if the only thing I did right in all of this was step out of the way of a hurricane to get married in a little room with a clerk who's seen everything, then okay. That's enough. Update 4. The voice note about jealousy sat in my phone like a stone at the bottom of a glass. It didn't dissolve. It just changed the sound of everything when it clinked. We left it there and let the water go still around it. We decided we weren't doing the swirl anymore. No check-ins through third parties, no how is she? Reports disguised as small talk. He texted his parents that we were going low contact for a while and would love to see them for dinner, for walks, for anything that didn't involve a conference table vibe. They wrote back we understand so fast it was like they'd been typing it for months. Her boyfriend officially moved out that weekend. He texted my husband for help because most of his friends live out of state and he didn't want to do it alone with her there. I went and sat in the car with the windows cracked and a seltzer because I didn't trust myself not to go up if I heard shouting, and I also didn't trust myself to go up if I heard silence. The building was one of those brick boxes with a stairwell that smells like 1,000 dinners. I watched a lady walk her cat on a leash across the courtyard and wondered how you get a cat to agree to that. At one point a box came down the stairs labeled winter stuff and the tape gave up halfway and scarves spilled out like a magician's trick. My husband scooped them back in. Her boyfriend walked past my window with a laundry basket on his hip and mouth, "Thank you," and I pretended to wipe my eye because I'm dramatic and there was nothing else to do with my hands. She came down once. Hair in a bun, big sunglasses like armor, one of those zip-up hoodies that zips from the top and the bottom so there's always a little triangle of stomach showing no matter what. She saw my husband and stopped on the landing 2 floors up and announced that if he was here, he could at least take her old dresser to the curb while he was playing martyr. He said he was here for the boyfriend. She said, "You're both pathetic," and then turned on her heel and stomped back up the stairs hard enough that dust floated down like glitter. My husband looked at me through the windshield with that face we both have now, that's half "this is unbelievable" and half "of course it went like that." They loaded the last box. No one threw anything out the window. The boyfriend hugged my husband in the parking lot and then went very still for a second, like when you stand up too fast and the world tilts, and then he got in his car and drove to his cousin's, and it was done. The relief that happens when something ends you've been braced for is its own kind of dizziness. The barbecue crept up like a tide you can't see moving until your ankles are wet. My mom bought too many buns and put them in the dryer to fluff, which is apparently a thing someone told her once at a PTA meeting in 2004 and she never let it go. We kept the address off everything. We told people to park 2 streets over and walk through the side gate. We set the table with those cheap white plates and a stack of paper napkins because the point wasn't pretty, it was ease. My grandpa showed up an hour early to be in charge of ice and also because he likes to be the first one to watch a party get built. He sat in the shade and told me that when my grandma was pregnant with my aunt, he painted their kitchen a color called seafoam and she cried because it looked like hospital jello, and then she loved it, and then they moved 3 years later, and that's basically what life is. I felt good in my body in a way that didn't feel like borrowed confidence. The kind that just sits there and breathes with you. We had a plan if she came. My husband and I wouldn't be the ones at the gate. My dad has the kind of voice that could tell a tornado to keep moving and it would pick another yard, so he and one of my cousins hung around the driveway sipping lemonade and talking about fantasy football like 2 golden retrievers guarding a bone. The first hour passed and it just looked like sunlight through leaves, you know? Kids chasing bubbles, my aunt misjudging the heat and putting a cheese board directly on the metal table so the breeze surrendered to the weather within 15 minutes, my husband's mom standing at the grill and shooing my dad away every time he tried to help by poking the burgers. The text came around too. Not to me. To my husband's mom. "I'm close." That was all it said. She didn't show me right away. She closed her eyes for a second the way you do when you step into bright sun, and then she walked quietly to the side of the house and told my dad. He put his drink down like it was a prop in a play and let his shoulders go wide. We didn't call anyone. We didn't bolt the gate or turn off the music. We let it look like a normal Saturday because it was. She came in a white jean jacket with bride across the back in pearls. I laughed later when my brain could hold it, but in the moment it felt like watching someone walk across a church in a bathing suit. She had a gift bag in her hand with a single crinkled tissue paper puffing out and a card taped to the front that said olive branch in calligraphy. She tried to walk past my dad and he said, "Not today, kid," the way you say it to a dog nosing at the trash. He didn't touch her. He didn't raise his voice, he just made it clear with his body that the only way in involved direct contact with his sternum. She looked at my husband's mom then, and whatever she saw there told her the answer was also no. "I can't even give you a gift?" she said, like we were being rude hosts. My father-in-law stepped up then and said the same thing my husband had said at the courthouse, "You're not coming in." She rolled her eyes at all of them like it was 8th grade and they wouldn't let her sit at the cool table, and then swung the gift bag in a little circle and held it out to my mother-in-law like, "See? I'm trying." My mother-in-law shook her head. "No. Not like this." It was so gentle that for a second I thought maybe that would be the thing that landed. It didn't. She lifted the card off the bag, tore it in half, tucked the halves into the bag like she was filing them, and then walked back down the driveway. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She got in her car, rolled her window down, and yelled, "Have a nice life, Cal," like she'd been waiting to use the nickname for months. It would have stung if it wasn't perfect. My husband looked at me and mouthed butter, and we both had to look at the sky for a second to keep it together. The bag was still sitting by the gate. No one wanted to touch it in case it was going to sprout a jack-in-the-box or a raccoon. Eventually my dad picked it up with 2 fingers like a spider and set it on the curb. We opened it after everyone left. It wasn't a bomb. It was an unframed 5x7 photo of my husband, maybe 10 years old, with a missing tooth, arms thrown around a very small version of her in a sprinkler. On the back she had written before and then scribbled it out so hard the paper feathered. I didn't know what to do with that kind of offering. I put it in a drawer. Maybe one day it will be a bridge, maybe it will always be a landmine. No one's day was ruined. That felt like the miracle. Someone's cousin started a conga line, someone's baby ate dirt and was fine, my grandma tried a White Claw and said it tasted like disappointment, but she drank the whole thing. At some point the light through the trees went golden the way it does when it's about to leave, and my husband put his hand on the back of my neck in that way that says "You're here, keep being here," and I realized I hadn't checked the street in an hour. She posted a black and white Instagram story later that said families are complicated over a picture of her hand with a ring on it. I stared at it because I'm a human being and my brain loves patterns even when it's not my business. The caption below said "Not that kind" with an eye roll and a crying laughing emoji, and I decided I wasn't going to spend my marriage deciphering posts that weren't meant for me and tossed my phone face down on the couch. My husband's phone buzzed and he looked at it and said she Venmo'd me $10 for gas, and we both laughed until we were breathless. The next week was quiet in that way where you notice silence because your muscles have been trained for noise. His parents came over with a folding table and asked if we wanted to paint swatches on the living room wall, because sometimes when you're grieving a shape of a person that still exists, all you can do is pick between sage and soft mint and call it progress. We booked a weekend in September at a tiny place near the water that had a picture of 2 plastic Adirondack chairs on the listing, and we high-fived because we are, at our core, very simple. His mom started therapy for herself. She told me in the driveway like she was whispering a scandal, but the look on her face was just clean. "I needed someone to tell me it's okay to shut my phone off," she said. "I'll still love her when it's off." I wanted to frame that sentence. She texted him a poem one morning. It wasn't hers. It was that one about wolves people put on mugs. No context. He wrote back, "Please stop," and then put his phone on the mantle like he was putting it in timeout. Her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, he started correcting himself in messages, and you could feel the tendon snap of that admission, dropped off a box that had ended up in his car by accident. It was my husband's old college notebooks, a mug from a beach trip, a framed photo of him and his dad fishing where they both look miserable but triumphant, like most pictures of fishing. The ex stood in our entryway for a minute and then said, "I went to my first therapy appointment," in the exact voice you use when you say "I went to the DMV." You could tell he didn't expect a parade. I said I was proud of him anyway, and he smiled at the floor and said, "She stood in the parking lot for 20 minutes and then left without going in," and then he lifted his hands like, "You definitely didn't ask, I just needed to put that somewhere." He and my husband hugged the way men hug when they've decided to be gentle with each other on purpose. The only actual contact we had with her was a letter. It came in one of those stiff envelopes good stationery companies use, and for a second I thought it was a wedding thank you from someone whose cursive I didn't recognize. My name was on it in that school teacher handwriting she has when she's trying to look official. Inside was 3 pages by hand, blue pen. If I had to give it a soundtrack, it would be a choir singing an apology while the strings under it played a horror movie. "I am grieving the woman I thought you would be. I am in a season of refinement. I can see now where you triggered wounds that were already there." Every sentence was an I that turned into a you by the end. I made it halfway through and then found the line where she wrote, "I look forward to walking down the aisle behind you when you do it for real next year," and I put the letter back in the envelope so fast it made a paper bite on my thumbnail. I wrote one sentence back and mailed it the next morning. "We are not doing this again," with our return address on the back, so there was no room for pretending I hadn't sent it. We did our weekend away, 2 chairs, a shoreline that looked like every other shoreline because they all undo you the same, a little restaurant where the waiter called us kids, and we left an embarrassing tip because we wanted to be someone's good story. We brought 1 camera and a deck of cards and didn't mention anyone's name who wasn't present. The only time a phone moved was to take a picture of a seagull with 1 leg who still ran as fast as the 2-legged ones. The morning we left, a text came in from a number we didn't know that said, "She's telling people you faked the courthouse for attention." My husband turned his phone off and handed it to me and said, I don't want to be reachable by rumor anymore, and it sounded like poetry, and also like common sense. We moved our timeline up. A unit in our building opened and our landlord offered us the bigger place 2 floors up if we wanted it because we're quiet and pay on time, which remains the sexiest compliment in the world to me now. We packed boxes and labeled them in Sharpie, and my husband put on an old playlist that made the afternoon feel like a college dorm, except instead of setting a bowl on fire by accident, we learned to break down cardboard with our feet. We painted the kitchen that light green, and the first coat went on streaky like everything transitional. The second coat looked like it apologized for the first and meant it. My mom stood in the doorway holding the butter cow and asked where it should live, and I pointed, the left corner by the toaster, and she set it down like a cornerstone. The last thing we did before bed the first night was install a camera over our door. It wasn't about catching anyone. It was about looking at the rectangle of our own hallway and knowing that if something appeared there that shouldn't, we could say no, and mean it. His mom came by the next morning with bagels and a plant and looked around like she was memorizing it for a good dream. She didn't mention her daughter. She put the plant on the sill and asked where the light was best, and we made coffee and all 3 of us looked at the sun and agreed no one knows where light is going to land until it lands. There's still noise around the edges. A cousin sent a screenshot she shouldn't have sent because it didn't make my day better and then apologized and sent me a picture of her dog to fix it. A mutual friend asked if she could give out our address for a holiday card exchange and I said no and didn't explain. My husband's coworker mentioned in passing that his sister had stopped by the office to say hello and he told HR and then told me, and the look on his face was very steady in a way that told me we were learning. She hasn't messaged me again. She messaged him last week a photo of their childhood dog from 2013 and wrote remember when joy was easy, and he stared at it for a long time and then he put it in a folder labeled later and closed it. I don't know what later looks like. For now, later is not now. On Tuesday, the mail had a thick envelope from the county clerk. It was the certified copy of our marriage certificate that I'd forgotten I ordered. My name on it, his name on it, the date that already feels like a good word to say, crisp paper that made a sound like a quiet drum when I put it on the table. I slid it under a magnet on the fridge because the bureaucratic proof felt right next to the grocery list. If you looked at our kitchen right then you would have thought nothing had ever been hard here. A couple of mugs, a plant, a butter cow, 2 people who exhale at the same time. If you opened a drawer you would have found the photo from the sprinkler and the letter with all the swirly righteous handwriting in the envelope with a record of a choice we made because we needed to. When I think about her now, it's like looking at the ocean from a cliff. You know there are things down there, you know some of them are beautiful and some of them have teeth and most of them are neither, they're just there, being what they are. You can build a fence along the edge and it doesn't make the ocean less what it is. It just means you can stand there without plunging in. If she changes, if she really wants to, there will be a gate. For now it's a fence, painted the same light green as my kitchen in my head. For now there are mornings where my husband pushes his toes under my foot because our bed is cold and we both like the same corner of the couch and we're learning what each other's quiet looks like. That's the life I picked. That's the life I picked again and again. Every day we don't take the bait. The best part of all of this is so boring I wish I could dress it up. He left for work this morning and kissed me in the doorway and asked me to text him a picture of the butter cow when the light hits it around 9 because it looks like it's on stage. I sent him the picture. The light hit it the way it always does. I didn't check the street. I turned off the kettle at the first whistle and it didn't scream.
I made a mistake. I still love you.
You made your choice. That's it.
Have you ever been blindsided by the one person you imagined building your whole life with? That's exactly what happened to me, just days before I was supposed to get married. My then fiancée, Elena, went public saying that leaving her former partner to be with me had been a wrong decision. Yeah, talk about devastating timing. So I called off the wedding. My name's Cole. I'm 29 and I work as a paramedic. Elena's 27 and teaches at an elementary school. We were engaged for 3 years and had been sharing a place for the last 12 months. Everything felt stable until February came along and flipped our world into something straight out of a drama series. Out of the blue, Elena started guarding her phone like it was classified. This was the same woman who once tossed me her phone without a second thought. But suddenly, it was like she was protecting national secrets. If my eyes drifted toward the screen, she'd yank it away like I'd crossed a line. I confronted her. She brushed it off, said she was anxious about the wedding, blamed it on work deadlines. Sure, because late-night messages and tucking your phone under your pillow totally scream lesson planning. Meanwhile, I was working overtime, burning myself out to cover the costs of our dream honeymoon in Hawaii. I kept convincing myself it was just the usual wedding jitters, but in the pit of my stomach, I felt the truth creeping in. One evening, she suggested we have a low-key dinner at this cozy little Italian spot. I assumed it was her way of making things right, maybe a chance to reconnect. But instead, she looked me in the eye and dropped this. Carter got in touch. Carter, the brooding ex with tortured artist energy. The guy who probably scribbles sad verses on coffee shop receipts. She came clean. They'd been in contact. She said the emotions between them had resurfaced. She called their connection untamed and compared being with me to drifting in a kiddie pool. Comfortable, uneventful, and uninspiring. That's when everything collapsed. She didn't just call off our wedding. She basically erased our whole relationship, painting it as a backup plan, like I'd been her plan B all along, the easy, dependable choice she never really wanted. Now I keep wondering if love should feel like chaos, or if I was just the easier choice all along. I sat there in silence, stunned. My face probably looked like a frozen screen, blank and glitching. Across from me, Elena twisted her napkin, eyes darting like she was hoping someone would rescue her. "Okay," I finally said, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside. "Sounds like you've made your choice." Her face went pale. "Wait, what do you mean?" "You just said Carter might be the better fit. If that's how you feel, go be with him, but not while you're living in my house." She stammered, trying to walk it back, but I was done. I wasn't going to stick around as her backup plan while she romanticized some moody ghost from college. I tossed $40 on the table, stood up, and said, "Dinner's on me. Call it a goodbye gift." The drive home was surreal. 3 years together, gone. 6 months of engagement, all the overtime I worked for our dream honeymoon, the house I bought for us, all suddenly meaningless. I couldn't stop hearing her words. Carter was wild. I was safe. Translation: I was the kiddie pool, he was the stormy sea. When I got home, she was already crying on the couch. I didn't stop. "Start packing," she tried again. "I didn't mean—" "Nope," I said, grabbing my phone. "You talk. I'll unlink our accounts." It felt weirdly satisfying, cutting those ties. She spent hours packing while I sat at the table like a bored security guard. Eventually, she stood at the door, luggage in hand. "You want the ring back?" she whispered. "Yes." She set it down like it might explode. Then came the kicker. "You're ending 3 years over one mistake?" I nearly laughed. "You ended it. I'm just taking out the trash." She left. Just like that, I was single again. The house was quiet except for that ring glinting on the table like a cruel joke. By morning, the calls started. Family, friends, everyone panicking like we'd sent out an Amber Alert. I kept it simple. "Elena wants someone else. I'm not fighting for someone who was already mine." My mom was furious. "Tell me this isn't about another guy." "It's Carter." Silence. "She left you for that loser?" she snapped. "That girl needs help." "No," I said. "He does." Even Dad chimed in. "Want help canceling the caterer?" "Dad, my fiancé bailed. The risotto isn't the problem." Selena, my sister, kept it short. "She's an idiot. You dodged a bullet." Then Elena's parents called. Her mom begged me not to give up. "She's just scared." "She compared me to her ex," I said. "That's not fear, that's disrespect." Her dad didn't call, just left a voicemail. Relationships take work. Right. Nothing says team effort like fantasizing about someone else while sharing a bed. I didn't call them back. What could I say? "Your daughter called me boring and bailed. Hope all's well." Then came the DMs from mutual friends. Curious, nosy, eager for tea. I kept my response short and clean. Ask Elena about Carter. That said it all. No drama, no shade, just the truth. Mic dropped. People are more perceptive than we think. One sentence was all it took to reveal everything, and the kicker, she had to own it. Had to admit she blew up our 3-year relationship because her college ex slid into her DMs one night. Word spread fast. We didn't run in a big circle, maybe 15 close friends, but within days, everyone knew. Most were on my side, especially the guys. No one blamed me for walking away after being treated like a backup option. I never signed up to be someone's emotional safety net. Still, a few people thought I was too harsh. "Maybe therapy would have helped," one friend said. Like quoting a psychology podcast made them an expert. "Therapy?" I said. "To help my fiancée realize she shouldn't be torn between me and her ex? I don't think so." Another chimed in. "She might have needed time to figure things out." "Cool," I said. "And I'm supposed to wait around holding a choose me if you feel like it sign?" "Yeah, no thanks. I wasn't going to spend thousands trying to convince someone already wearing my ring that I should come before Carter. But honestly, the breakup wasn't the worst part. It was canceling the wedding. We'd dropped thousands. Venue, photographer, catering, flowers, DJ. All non-refundable heartbreak. Some vendors were decent. The photographer, an absolute champ. When I called, she sighed like she'd seen it all. "Trust me, you're not even in my top 10 disasters," she said. "Just a small cancellation fee." Others weren't so forgiving. The venue kept everything. We can't rebook this close to the date, they claimed. Right, I said, because everyone's dying to tie the knot the day my life blew up. The caterer expected me to pay for the food. We already bought ingredients. Awesome, I said. Hope someone enjoys 200 chicken marsalas without me. All told, I was out around $8,000. But I didn't ask Elena for a dime. I could have. But I wanted a clean break. No Venmo drama, no dragging it out, just closure, however expensive. Worse than the money, making those calls. Telling friends and family it was over was brutal. Everyone had questions. One cousin asked, "You think she'll come back?" "Sure," I said. Right after pigs book round-trip tickets. The wildest responses came from her coworkers. 3 teachers messaged me, not to defend her, but to say she screwed up. That's when it hit me. They saw it coming. Apparently, Elena had been telling people we'd grown apart and wanted different things. Translation? I wanted a marriage. She wanted Carter. But teachers don't fall for vague. If she acted at work like she did at home, they probably saw the cracks long before I did. Teachers have radar for lies. If they can spot a hidden phone in a hoodie pocket, they can see through fake stories too. Then, 2 weeks later, a friend sent me screenshots of her Facebook posts. Inspirational quotes, of course. Stuff about following your heart and not settling. Seriously? Your heart led you to Carter's inbox. Don't rebrand that as some spiritual awakening. And not settling? That hit hard, like I was the practice round before her real love story could begin. I just stared at my phone, stunned. Mike, my coworker, glanced over. "You good? You look like you're about to launch that phone into orbit." "She's online making it sound like I wasn't enough," I said. He shrugged. "Well, technically she left you, but not for the reasons she's posting." Brutal, but true. Still, I didn't take the bait. No angry posts, no cryptic captions, no online jabs. Why bother? Arguing online just makes you look bitter. I wasn't about to turn into the guy venting on Facebook with half a pizza in his lap. The truth would speak for itself. What really hit me wasn't the breakup or the gossip. It was the quiet, the stillness. No, "How was your day?" when I walked in. No cooking together or bickering over Netflix. Just me, the microwave, and way too much silence. Sometimes I'd still ask, "What do you feel like watching?" Then remember, nobody's there, except the ceiling fan. I threw myself into work, picked up every shift, covered for coworkers, logged overtime like it was a full-time job. My boss probably thought I'd had a spiritual awakening. Truth is, I just couldn't sit alone with my thoughts, and the extra income helped offset the financial crater left behind by the canceled wedding. Mike never asked questions. He always had my back. "Gotta step out," I'd say. "Trying to talk a florist out of charging me for flowers no one will ever see." He'd just nod. "Bring me a pity donut." Honestly, my whole team stepped up. A few had survived messy divorces and offered wisdom only heartbreak could teach. "Better now than after you signed the papers," one said. "Divorce lawyers charge more than wedding planners," another added. It didn't fix anything, but it reminded me I wasn't the first to go through this kind of wreck. By the 3rd week, the rage had faded. I wasn't angry, I was just tired. But I could finally breathe. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a sentence. Oddly enough, things started to feel okay. The anxiety was gone. No more side-eyeing her every time her phone lit up. No more silent panic over wedding napkins or fake smiles at cake tastings. That heavy, unspoken tension, gone. So was she. First thing I did? Blocked her everywhere. Phone, social media, even Pinterest. No chance I'd accidentally see her planning Wedding 2.0 with Carter. If she wanted to reach out, she'd be yelling into a void. And if Carter was really better for her, great. Let her enjoy garage living with a guy who peaked during frat week. Around that time, I started talking with Vanessa, an ER nurse with a sharp wit and zero drama. We weren't dating, just sharing small talk during downtime. But it was refreshing. She laughed at my jokes, asked questions, remembered things I said. No passive-aggressive sighs, no mystery cold shoulders, just normal conversation. One day she joked, "Is sarcasm your therapy?" "Pretty much," I said. "It's cheaper." It hit me then. Elena had mentally checked out long before the breakup. While I was booking venues, she was fantasizing about Carter. But Vanessa, she just got it. No games, no pressure, just 2 people talking like adults. Then one afternoon, I'm mid-renovation, covered in sawdust, and my phone buzzes. It's Jordan, barely able to speak through laughter. Dude, he wheezes, you're not going to believe this. If this is another pyramid scheme? No, gold. My buddy's girlfriend knows one of Elena's coworkers. I sighed. Of course she does, he continued. Carter dumped her. I stopped mid-swipe. Wait, he broke up with her? Yep, 6 weeks in. Said he never really loved her. Just wanted to see if the spark was still there. I sat down, stunned. So he test drove her and returned the keys? Jordan was still cracking up. She's been calling nonstop. He had to block her. I nearly dropped my coffee. She got blocked? The queen of ghosting got ghosted? It was poetic. After all her talk about passion and fate, she got burned, again, by the same guy. Turns out nostalgia doesn't come with a refund. And yeah, I felt a little smug. I'd seen Carter for what he was from the start. All flash, no substance. The kind of guy you know will disappoint you. And she still picked him. Twice. I didn't laugh, but I could have. The irony was too perfect. She handed me betrayal on a silver platter, and life served her poetic justice right back. But more than satisfaction, I felt peace. Real, lasting, sleep-like-a-rock peace. I dodged a train wreck, and the gossip, nonstop. Suddenly, it was like the universe was on a clearance sale for closure. She'd been flooding her socials with glittery self-love quotes. Know your worth. Never settle. That kind of recycled fortune cookie wisdom. Then Carter dumped her, and her TED Talk era vanished overnight. Even her coworkers, once cheering for her true love reunion, went quiet. Hard to keep waving the romance flag when your leading man ghosts you in a 5-word text. A few days later, my sister told me Elena's mom had called ours, crying, asking if I might talk to her. My mom, bless her, gave the gentlest, absolutely not ever recorded. Your daughter made her choice, she said. Now she lives with it. A week later, I ran into Lila, one of the former bridesmaids, at the grocery store. Tense at first, but then she smiled. Hey, she said. Most of us think you did the right thing. What she did wasn't okay. Right there in the chip aisle, I nearly hugged her. When you're surrounded by chaos, validation hits different. Then she dropped the real bomb. Elena had fully believed Carter would drop everything, his job, his city, maybe his gym membership, and move in with her. She'd built a whole fantasy around a guy who couldn't commit to a weekend plan. Reality clearly hadn't gotten the memo. That's the trap with emotional cheating. Nostalgia paints your ex like a soulmate instead of someone who already chose to leave. Suddenly, a college fling becomes meant to be. Right, like microwave pizza is fine dining. Then came the please Cole phase. Blocked numbers, mystery voicemails, maybe even borrowed phones. I didn't answer. If I wanted emotional spam, I'd pick up robocalls about car warranties. She even showed up at Jordan's firehouse. She looked wrecked, he told me. Wanted me to pass along a message. What'd you say? Told her to get lost. That's why Jordan stays in the inner circle. No hesitation, no fluff. Did I feel a little bad? Maybe. But most of me thought, you built this, enjoy the view. When that didn't work, she went full drama. A Facebook essay. I wouldn't have seen it, she was long blocked, but my sister did. Sent screenshots with the subject line, brace yourself. Elena's version? I never loved her. I abandoned her. I was distant and cold. Not one word about Carter. No mention of how she told me I was the safe, boring guy. Just a polished victim monologue. The real entertainment, the comments. People weren't buying it. Didn't you leave him for your ex? This story feels incomplete. Girl, be serious. She deleted it within hours, but the internet never forgets. That was the moment I realized she wasn't sad. She was spiraling. When your breakup recovery plan includes writing fiction for Facebook, you've hit emotional rock bottom. Meanwhile, I was breathing easy. My 30th birthday rolled around a few months later. Normally, I don't care about birthdays. It's just cake for breakfast. But my family? They celebrate like it's the Oscars. No skipping it, breakup or not. By then, I'd been seeing more of Vanessa. I casually mentioned the party and she lit up. Wait, I get to meet your family? Sure, I shrugged. Just know my mom will ask about marriage before dessert. She laughed and didn't flinch. That was a good sign. The day of, I actually woke up happy, which felt strange. Isn't 30 when you're supposed to wake up with back pain and regret? But there I was, standing in my own place with a job I liked, real friends, and someone who didn't treat me like a placeholder. Just a few months earlier, I was drowning in wedding stress and dodging mood swings over what kind of napkins we ordered. Now, I was living, breathing, and free. And that felt like a birthday worth celebrating. Vanessa showed up around 3 with a cake. Not just any cake, a masterpiece. Homemade chocolate with frosting that didn't taste like it had been squeezed from a can. She remembered me ranting once about how store-bought icing tastes like chemicals, so she made it herself. That gesture? Worth more than any diamond. Definitely more than Elena's classic move of "I ordered delivery again, happy anniversary." From the moment my mom met Vanessa, she was hooked. The two of them were swapping cake ideas like they'd been baking buddies since forever. My dad, meanwhile, was outside showing off at the grill like he thought someone might hand him a cooking show. He even let Vanessa try his famous secret sauce, the same sauce he normally treats like it's a top-level government secret. If he's offering that, it's basically a welcome to the family gesture. Then my sister Selena, who's known for her savage honesty, leaned in and muttered, "I actually like her." That was a major deal. Selena's hated every single girlfriend I've brought home. She once described Elena as a walking beige blanket. And truly, the difference was wild. Elena always acted like family get-togethers were some kind of punishment, forced smiles glued to her phone, and griping later that my dad repeated himself too much. Which, okay, he does, but that's part of the charm. It's like watching reruns of Friends. You're supposed to join in, not roll your eyes. But Vanessa, she jumped into everything. She asked my mom for funny childhood memories about me, laughed at my dad's ridiculous wordplay, played cornhole with Tom, and actually held her own. It felt like she already belonged. By the time the sun started to set, we were all sitting around the fire pit my dad had built the previous year. Great food, great people, and the usual back and forth about dumb work calls, like the guy who called emergency because his Wi-Fi wasn't working. I remember thinking, wow, this birthday is actually great. Way better than last year, when Elena sulked on her phone like joy was a contagious disease and barely muttered, "Happy birthday." Then someone knocked on the front door. I assumed it was a neighbor asking us to quiet down, or maybe someone irritated that we'd parked in front of their driveway. You know, the usual weekend stuff. Not even close. I opened the door, and there she was, Elena, on my doorstep, holding a gift, smiling like we hadn't just ended things in a dramatic mess. "Happy birthday, Cole," she said, sugary sweet. I just blinked. She looked different, like she hadn't been eating or sleeping much. Hollow eyes, noticeable weight loss, and her hair looked uneven and freshly hacked, like she either had a meltdown or went to a hair salon that doubled as a prank show. Honestly, she looked like an ad for before pictures. She was clearly trying to come across as confident and upbeat, but it felt more like a desperate pitch from someone trying to sell you a lemon with a smiley face sticker on the hood. I saw right through it. "What are you doing here, Elena?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I brought you a birthday present. Can I step in for just a sec?" Behind me, the noise in the backyard had quieted down. Great. Now we had an audience. Even if they couldn't see what was happening. Just what I wanted. My ex showing up like some dramatic party trick. "You can't just show up without letting me know," I told her. "I get it," she said quickly, raising her hands like she was under arrest. "I just felt weird about us not talking. I wanted to give you this and maybe talk for a few minutes." She held the gift out like it was some kind of peace treaty, and all I could think was that she probably bought it back when she still thought we'd make it, before Carter came along, cologne and all. The whole thing felt unreal. The woman who once told me I was convenient and boring was now on my porch, freshly dumped by the guy she left me for. If this were a Netflix show, the episode title would be Karma, Special Delivery. "What exactly do you want to discuss?" I asked, knowing full well where this was heading. "Us," she replied quickly. "How I screwed up, how much I miss being with you." I laughed, loudly. Definitely not the reaction she was expecting. "You miss that? You mean the relationship you called safe and dull? The one you compared to a kiddie pool?" Her cheeks flushed so quickly I thought she might explode. She probably hoped I'd let that comment fade into history. No chance. "I was emotional," she said, flustered. "I didn't really mean it." "Oh, right," I said sarcastically. "People say stuff like that all the time by accident. No big deal." We both knew better. No one says something so specific unless they've been thinking it for a while. Just then, the front door opened and Vanessa stepped outside. "Is everything all right out here?" she asked, calm as ever. The expression on Elena's face was gold. She went from smug to stunned to furious in about 2 seconds. You could practically hear her thoughts. Wait, he moved on? He's supposed to be heartbroken, rewatching sad movies, and waiting for me to come back. "Who is this?" Elena snapped, her voice jumping an octave. Vanessa didn't even blink. She just smiled politely and said, "I'm Vanessa." "You must be Elena," like she was greeting someone at a reception desk. Cool, collected, no drama. If there were awards for grace under pressure, Vanessa just won one. "You're already seeing someone?" Elena shrieked. "Actually," I replied with a calm correction, "it's been nearly 3 months since you chose Carter, so yeah, I'm with someone who actually gives a crap." That's when Elena blew up. She started yelling about how I never fought for her, how I moved on too fast, how I treated her like she didn't matter. Classic reversal. She was the one who tossed me aside like I was backup. Yet somehow I was the villain for refusing to wait around and cry over it. After everything went down, Vanessa just stood there like a statue of calm. Even though I could sense how uneasy she was, she stayed composed. She didn't argue, didn't try to clear her name, just let Elena self-destruct in front of everyone. Honestly, it was the kind of drama you'd expect popcorn for. The yelling was loud enough to raise the neighbors, so of course my dad came around the side of the house. One glance at the situation and he locked eyes with me, his tone firm and unmistakable. "She needs to go." Naturally, Elena acted like he hadn't said a word. She kept going, voice rising in pitch like she thought being louder would somehow make her more persuasive. That's when Selena came charging out the door. "Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Straightforward, unapologetic, and pure Selena. My family had never exactly rolled out the red carpet for Elena, but back when we were engaged, they faked politeness for my sake. Now that the ring was off, the gloves were too. Selena had clearly been waiting for this showdown like it was the final round of a title fight. But Elena wasn't ready to retreat. She was spiraling, and you could practically see the fantasy she'd built in her head collapsing. In her version, she shows up with a present. I get emotional, and we ride off into the sunset like some soap opera ending. Instead, she ended up yelling in my front yard while my girlfriend looked on like she'd stumbled into an unscripted reality TV show called Ex-Fiancé Meltdown. Eventually, Elena stormed off toward her car. I figured the scene was over, but nope. She couldn't resist one last dramatic flare. Her mascara had streaked so badly she looked like a raccoon who lost a fight with the weather. "This is insane, Cole. Wouldn't it just be simpler if we got back together? We had 3 years." 3 years? Yeah, and all of it about as productive as a broken vending machine. Sure, it's history, but that doesn't make it worth preserving. I looked at her, clutching that pathetic gift like it would undo everything she'd wrecked. Just a few months earlier, she'd been my bride-to-be. Now she was just some stranger melting down on my front steps because I hadn't stayed heartbroken in her absence. "Easier for who?" I called back. "Because it seems pretty easy on my end." Mic drop moment, no question. She jumped in her car, slammed the door, and took off like a teenager grounded for the weekend. Tires screeching, the whole dramatic exit. I half expected her to drive back and TP the place. I stepped back inside. Vanessa gave my hand a quiet squeeze. No questions, no pressing. Just silent support. My family was irritated, yeah, but the mood settled fast. Birthdays keep moving, tantrums or not. The rest of the evening ended up being genuinely fun. Elena's interruption felt like a strange commercial break in an otherwise solid episode. Her present? We tossed it the next morning. Didn't even open it. Nothing in that box could have outweighed the peace of not being with her anymore. That part of my life? Officially over. Padlocked and tossed into the fire. About a month later, word got around that Elena had moved back in with her parents. Turns out, without someone to split the rent, her teacher salary couldn't cut it on its own. The irony didn't escape me. She'd traded a stable home, steady job, and someone who actually loved her, for a guy who treated her like a timeshare. And it took all of 6 weeks for Mr. Meant-to-Be to ditch her. That's what I call a stellar return on poor decisions. Not long after, I heard she'd taken some time off from teaching. Voluntary? Maybe. Or maybe her employer nudged her toward a mental health sabbatical after too many red flags. Either way, I couldn't imagine the joy of waltzing back into work and explaining, "Remember my engagement? Yeah, that exploded. Now I'm back with Mom and Dad. Creamer, anyone?" Jordan, my own personal small-town news anchor, kept dropping updates whether I asked or not. "Dude," he told me one night like he was sharing classified info. "Elena's been hitting up old flames. Not just Carter. Everyone. Like she's rewatching her own dating series." I laughed. "What's next, sending DMs to guys from high school?" "Hey, it's me, the girl who torched her life and burned every bridge. You up for coffee?" It was sad, really. But when you treat people like backup options, eventually you run out of backups. The kicker? Carter's reaction. Apparently, someone filled him in on Elena's birthday disaster at my place. And he wasn't thrilled. Jordan gave me his best Carter impression. Bro, she's nuts. Dodged a bullet. I raised an eyebrow. You mean Carter, the romantic genius she left me for, that guy? Jordan grinned. Yep, that exact one. Figures. Guys like Carter are experts at selling dreams, but they disappear the second things get real. He convinced her they were soulmates, then ghosted when reality showed up. Now he was out here acting like she was the crazy one. Classic misdirection. Honestly, I tuned out of Elena's drama pretty quickly. I had new things happening. Better job, better love life, better future. Meanwhile, she was starring in her own personal sitcom, and I had box seats without paying a dime. 6 months after we broke up, Vanessa and I decided to officially live together. She was already at my place most nights, and it just made sense. Financially, practically, but more than anything, emotionally. There was no hesitation, no fear, no nagging doubts. When it's the right person, taking that next step feels like walking into something sturdy, not a leap into the unknown. Then, about 2 months later, I bumped into Lila, one of Elena's old co-workers, while picking out fruit at the grocery store. She was the same one who once told me I handled everything maturely. She caught my eye near the apples. Cole, long time no see. How have you been? I smiled. Still living rent-free in Elena's highlight reel, from what I hear. Lila laughed and leaned in. She's teaching again. New school across town. Fresh slate, I said, dropping fruit into my cart. She needed it. Too many whispers about Carter, she added, casually reaching for bananas. Then she dropped this one. She's been asking about you. My eyebrows went up. Wanted to know if you're still with the nurse, if you seem happy. I nearly dropped an apple. Happy? Oh, I've never been better. Especially now that my phone isn't an emotional roulette wheel. Lila snorted. Well, she's still checking in, mostly through shared friends. That told me everything I needed. If you're still tracking your ex's every move after a year, you're not nearly as over it as you claim. But hey, not my issue anymore. I'd built a new life with someone who didn't need constant convincing, someone who saw a future with me, no sales pitch required. Some folks take their failures and turn them into stepping stones. They look inward, make changes, and grow into better versions of themselves. Then there are others, the ones who keep pressing the same shiny self-sabotage button and act shocked when their life keeps going up in flames. That dress she bought for our wedding? I'd bet money it's still shoved in the back of her parents' closet, wedged between dusty holiday boxes and her old cheer jacket. Thousands of dollars in white satin and lace, a perfect monument to the life she lit on fire for a 6-week thrill ride. While she was unraveling, I was putting down roots. Something honest, something that could last. With someone who didn't see me as a pit stop on the way to the next Carter. Vanessa was grounded. She didn't chase fairy tales. She stood by me because she believed in us, not because she needed a stand-in. There's a world of difference. About a year after everything blew up with Elena, I asked Vanessa to marry me. No flash or spectacle, just a peaceful proposal during a quiet weekend getaway we'd planned together. No spotlight, no audience, just the two of us. And to be honest, it couldn't have been more right. But naturally, Elena couldn't stay quiet forever. Eventually, she reappeared, this time with a long message from a phone number I didn't know. My guess? She borrowed someone's device, since she was still blocked on mine. The message was massive, like a full-length novella. Shakespeare would have taken notes. It was all there, apologies, explanations, desperate pleas for a second shot. She mentioned going to therapy. Good for her. Said Carter had been a pipe dream. Took her long enough. Claimed she'd realized I was the real deal all along. Every line dripping with regret and daily reminders of what she threw away. She said she was finally ready to fight for what we had. Yeah, well, a hard pass. I never wrote back. Didn't even open it far enough to show a read receipt. Elena had already said all she needed to a year earlier. When she looked me in the eye and said Carter was the better man, that was when the chapter closed. And she had been the one to seal it shut. Nothing fundamental had changed, except her fallback plan had imploded. Now she was crawling through the ashes, hoping I was still there, waiting where she'd left me. Spoiler alert. Decent men don't hang around indefinitely hoping to get subbed in after the game's already been lost. Elena taught me everything I don't want in a relationship. Vanessa showed me what I do. And that, right there, that's everything. That's forever.
My girlfriend posted the stupidest thing I've ever read, and it blew up our lives. I'm not even exaggerating. It all started last Tuesday. I was scrolling through my phone on my lunch break when I saw the post from my girlfriend, Jenna. It was one of those generic, inspirational quote images with a sunset background, but the text was what got me. Don't let your boyfriend stop you from finding your husband. I just stared at it. After 4 years together, living in an apartment I'd had before she even moved to this city, this is what she puts out there for everyone to see. I didn't even think. I just commented, "Good luck finding him." Then I went to my profile, changed my relationship status to single, and made sure to tag her mom, her dad, and her sister in the post. Her post disappeared in minutes. My phone, however, started to explode. First came the texts from her, a string of question marks. Then, "What did you do?" Followed by, "Take that down right now." I ignored them. Then her sister Chloe messaged me. "Mark, what is going on? Jenna is hysterical." I sent Chloe a screenshot of Jenna's post. Her only reply was, "Oh. Yeah, oh." Her mom called me twice, but I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear the shrieking. I put my phone on silent and tried to get back to work, but the anger was just a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I knew when I got home it was going to be a mess. I was right. The second I walked through the door of my apartment, she was there, standing in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed. Her face was puffy and red from crying, but now it was just set in a mask of fury. "You humiliated me," she hissed. "You did that yourself," I said, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. I walked past her into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water. I wasn't going to have this conversation dehydrated. It was just a quote. It didn't mean anything, she yelled, following me. "Everyone posts stuff like that." "No, Jenna, they don't. Not when they're in a supposed serious relationship," I said, twisting the cap off. What was I supposed to think? That you were just window shopping for my replacement while I was paying our rent? That is so unfair. You know I'm not like that. I just laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Your post said the opposite. You told the entire world that I was a placeholder, a temporary obstacle. So, obstacle removed, you're welcome. She started crying again, but this time it was the angry, frustrated kind of crying. "So that's it? 4 years and you throw it all away over one stupid post? And you had to tag my family? My mom is freaking out?" "Good. Maybe she can help you pack," I said, walking back into the living room and sitting on the couch. I picked up the remote. "I want you out by the end of the month." Her whole demeanor changed. The tears stopped instantly. A nasty, confident little smirk appeared on her face. "No," she said simply. I looked up from the TV guide. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, I'm not leaving. I live here, I get my mail here. My name is on the lease. You can't just kick me out, Mark. That's not how it works. I have tenants' rights." She stood there, looking so proud of herself for knowing that little legal tidbit. She really thought she had me. She figured she could stay here, rent-free, while she figured out her next move, probably while simultaneously auditioning for the role of husband. The thought of her bringing some other guy into my apartment, sleeping in the bed I paid for, while I was stuck here, made something in my brain snap. "We'll see about that," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She just shrugged, turned on her heel, and flounced into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat there on the couch for a long time, the TV humming in the background, and I started making a plan. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This was war. The next few days were a special kind of hell. She'd be sickeningly sweet one minute, asking what I wanted for dinner, and a monster the next, blasting music until 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. She started having friends over constantly, loud, obnoxious people who left messes I always ended up cleaning. One night I came home and found one of her friends, some guy named Todd with a punchable face, sitting on my couch drinking my beer, with his feet on my coffee table. I walked in, looked at him, looked at Jenna, and just said, "Get him out." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Mark, don't be a jerk. This is Todd. We're just hanging out. I don't care if he's the Pope. Get him out of my apartment, now." The ensuing fight was epic. It ended with her screaming that she could have whoever she wanted over because it was her apartment too. That was her big mistake. The next morning, I sent an email to my landlord, Mr. Henderson. He's an old grumpy guy who has owned the building for 40 years and hates drama more than he hates anything else. I wrote, subject, lease question, apt 4B. Hi Mr. Henderson, hope you're well. I have a quick question about our lease agreement. My co-tenant Jenna and I have recently ended our personal relationship. She has begun having guests over at all hours, creating significant noise disturbances and violating what I believe is the quiet enjoyment principle for myself and potentially other tenants. Could you please clarify the policy on overnight guests and excessive noise as stated in our signed lease? I've attached a copy for your convenience. I attached the PDF of our lease, which I had saved on my computer. I had already reread it 3 times. An hour later, I got a reply. Mr. Henderson was nothing if not efficient. His email was blunt. Mark, see Section 7, Clause C of your lease agreement. Guests of tenants are not permitted to stay for more than 3 consecutive nights in any 33-day period without prior written consent from landlord. Tenants are responsible for the conduct of their guests. Any activity that disrupts the peace and quiet enjoyment of other tenants, as determined by the landlord, is a direct violation of this lease. This is your only warning. Any further complaints from you or other tenants regarding noise or unauthorized long-term guests will result in a formal notice to cure or quit being issued to both leaseholders. This notice will give you 3 days to remedy the violation, i.e., the guest leaves permanently, or vacate the premises. Regards, D. Henderson Building Management. I saved that email as a PDF. That night, Jenna brought Todd over again. They were being loud in the living room, laughing obnoxiously at some terrible reality show. I walked out of my room, phone in hand. Jenna, he needs to leave, I said calmly. We've been over this. I'm not. I cut her off. He needs to leave now, or we both get evicted. I held up my phone, showing her the email from Mr. Henderson. I watched her face as she read it. The color drained away. Her smug confidence evaporated, replaced by a flicker of panic. You went to the landlord? She whispered, horrified. You said it was your apartment too, I replied, mimicking her tone from the other night. That means you're responsible for following the rules too. He leaves in the next 5 minutes, or I'm calling Mr. Henderson to report a lease violation. Your choice. Todd, who had been watching the exchange like a tennis match, suddenly seemed very uncomfortable. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. Hey man, it's cool. I was just leaving anyway. He practically ran out the door. Jenna stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She had nothing to say. I had taken away her new favorite toy. She retreated to the bedroom, and I had the first quiet night in a week. The victory was small, but it was a start. The eviction threat hung in the air now. She knew I was serious. She had a deadline, whether she liked it or not. With the threat of eviction looming, Jenna's strategy shifted. She couldn't use the apartment as a weapon anymore, so she moved on to our possessions. The next Saturday, while I was out getting groceries, she sent me a long, rambling text message. It was a list of everything in the apartment that she was claiming was hers. The list included the 65-inch OLED TV in the living room, the custom gaming PC on my desk, the surround sound system, and even the expensive espresso machine in the kitchen. She ended the text with, "These were gifts and things we bought together, so I'll be taking them when I move out. We can be adults about this and split things fairly." I read the text standing in the cereal aisle and almost laughed out loud. Fairly. Not a single item on her list had been purchased with her money. The TV was my bonus from work 2 years ago. The PC I had built myself, part by part, over 6 months. The espresso machine was a birthday gift to myself. She had contributed exactly $0 to any of it. This wasn't about fairness, it was about leverage. She was trying to hurt me financially on her way out the door. I didn't reply to the text. I finished my shopping, went home, and put everything away. She was in the bedroom, pointedly ignoring me. I went to my office and started digging through my digital files. It took me about an hour, but I found them all. The digital receipt from Best Buy for the TV, with my name and my credit card number on it, dated October 17th, 2023. The series of invoices from Newegg and Amazon for every single component in my PC, from the motherboard to the graphics card. The receipt from Williams-Sonoma for the espresso machine. I saved them all into a single folder on my desktop, naming it Evidence. Then I scrolled way back through my text history with her. I found a message from the day after I had the TV mounted on the wall. It was a picture of her smiling on the couch with the new TV in the background. Her text underneath it, sent at 8:14 p.m. on October 18, 2023, read, "Movie night is so much better on your insane new TV. Thanks for letting me use it." I took a screenshot of that conversation. It felt good, like stacking ammunition. My friend Dave called while I was organizing the files. "How's life in the war zone?" he asked. "About to get tactical," I replied. I explained her latest move, the list of demands. "No way," he said. "She's really trying to take your PC? Does she even know how to turn it on?" "Doesn't matter. It's about hurting me," I said. "But I have an idea. Are you busy tonight? And do you have some space in your garage?" An hour later, Dave pulled up in his truck. Jenna was out with friends, which I knew from her annoying habit of posting her every move on Instagram. We worked quickly. We carefully unmounted the TV and wrapped it in blankets. We disconnected my entire PC setup, tower, monitors, keyboard, everything, and loaded it into his truck bed. We took the surround sound speakers, the subwoofer, and the espresso machine. In 30 minutes, every high-value item from her list was gone. The living room looked barren and sad with a giant empty space on the wall. I went back inside, opened the folder named Evidence, and composed an email to Jenna. I attached every single receipt and the screenshot of her text. The subject was, "Regarding your list." The body of the email said, "Jenna, I received your text. It seems you're mistaken about the ownership of several items in the apartment. As you can see from the attached documents, all the items you listed were purchased solely by me. They were not gifts, nor were they purchased jointly. To prevent any further confusion during your move-out process, I have moved these items to a secure, off-site location for safekeeping. They will be returned to the apartment after you have fully vacated the premises and returned your key. Mark." I hit send. Then I texted her a single message, "Check your email." The response was almost instantaneous. My phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. I declined the call. A flood of texts came through. They were a frantic, typo-filled mess of rage. "Where is my TV? You can't do that. I'm calling the cops." I replied once. "They're not your things, Jenna. The police will be very interested to see the receipts I have, the ones I just emailed you." The text stopped. The phone went silent. I knew she had no move left to make. I had the proof, and I had the possessions. She couldn't hold them hostage anymore. I sat down on the couch in my emptily lit living room, and for the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe again. The silence was wonderful. Losing the battle for the apartment and the possessions sent Jenna into a full-blown meltdown. She had no leverage left, so she resorted to the only weapon she had left: her words. She decided that if she couldn't get my stuff, she would try to destroy my reputation. It started subtly. A few of our mutual friends started acting weird. Texts would go unanswered. I got uninvited from a weekly game night through a curt message from the host, saying, "Hey man, think it's best if you sit this one out for a bit? Things are just too awkward." I knew it was her. Dave confirmed it. He called me one afternoon, his voice low and angry. "Dude, you need to see this." Jenna started a group chat. She's in there with like 10 of our friends, plus her sister and a cousin. She's going nuclear. He added me to a separate chat and forwarded me the screenshots. My stomach turned as I read them. Jenna had posted carefully cropped snippets of our old text arguments. She had selected only my responses, stripped of all context. A message where I said, "I'm not discussing this anymore tonight," was presented as me being emotionally abusive and giving her the silent treatment. A text where I told her, "You can't just spend that much money without talking to me," which was about a ridiculously expensive and non-refundable vacation she tried to book on our joint credit card, was framed as me being financially controlling. She had written a long paragraph to accompany the screenshots. "I know you all love Mark, but you don't know what he was like behind closed doors. This is just a small sample of how he controlled everything and wore me down emotionally. I'm just lucky I got out when I did. I'm so sorry to do this, but I feel like you all deserve to know the truth about who he really is." It was a masterpiece of manipulation. She was playing the victim perfectly, and from the replies in the chat, some people were buying it. There were messages of support, people saying, "I'm so sorry, Jenna. and we had no idea. I felt sick. These were people I had known for years, people I had considered friends, and they were turning on me based on a handful of cropped out-of-context messages. The old me would have been devastated, but the new me, the one forged in the fire of the last few weeks, just got cold. I didn't respond in the group chat. That's what she wanted, a messy public fight where I would look defensive and angry, proving her point. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I thought about the one person in her family who always seemed to have a level head, her dad, Alan. We weren't close, but we'd always gotten along. He was a quiet, serious man who valued honesty and hated drama. He was the complete opposite of Jenna's mother, who enabled her every whim. I spent the rest of the afternoon gathering my own evidence. I went through years of text messages. I found the full, unedited conversations from every single screenshot she had posted. I put them side by side with her cropped versions, highlighting the parts she had conveniently deleted. The financial control argument? The full text showed her apology right after. "You're right. I should have asked first. That was stupid of me." The silent treatment? The preceding texts showed her screaming at me via text for 3 solid hours because I had to work late and couldn't make dinner with her friends. My text was sent at 1 a.m. when I just couldn't fight anymore. I also had a secret weapon. A few nights ago, during one of her tirades about the TV, I had quietly started a voice recording on my phone, which I left on the kitchen counter. One-party consent for recording is legal in our state, and I had a feeling it might come in handy. In the recording, she wasn't a victim. She was screaming, calling me names, and threatening to destroy me for embarrassing her. The contrast between the fragile victim in the group chat and the screeching woman on that audio file was jarring. I compiled everything into a neat email, all the side-by-side screenshot comparisons. I attached the audio file, naming it Jenna Verbal Abuse Sample.mp3. Then I began to write. The email was addressed to her father, Alan. Subject, a difficult situation regarding Jenna. Dear Alan, I am writing to you under extremely difficult circumstances, and I sincerely apologize for involving you. I always respected you a great deal during my time with Jenna. Jenna has recently created a group chat with our mutual friends and has been sharing manipulated and out-of-context text messages to paint a picture of me as being controlling and emotionally abusive. These are serious and false accusations that could damage my personal and professional reputation. I would not be contacting you if this were just a simple breakup drama, but her actions have escalated to outright defamation. I have attached a document containing her cropped screenshots alongside the full, unedited conversations for your review. You will see that she has deliberately removed all context to misrepresent reality. I have also attached a short audio file from a recent conversation in our apartment. I warn you, it is unpleasant, but it is an accurate representation of the behavior I have been dealing with. It is not the behavior of a victim. I am not asking you to take sides. I am only asking you to see the truth. I hope you can talk to your daughter and convince her to stop this harmful campaign of lies before she does irreparable damage to herself and others. Sincerely, Mark. I read the email over one last time. It was professional, respectful, and damning. I hit send at 6:05 p.m. I didn't hear anything for 2 hours. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Alan. I've seen everything. I am dealing with this. I am very sorry, Mark. 20 minutes after that, the group chat exploded. Jenna posted, "My dad is calling me. What did you do, you psycho?" Then she must have deleted it, because it vanished. Another friend in the chat, one who had been on my side, texted me privately. "Dude, Jenna just left the group. Her sister Chloe just posted, 'Everyone please just drop this. It's over.' I never found out what Alan said to her. I don't need to." The smear campaign stopped dead in its tracks. The next day, 2 of the friends who had iced me out sent me awkward apology texts. I accepted, but I knew things would never be the same. Jenna was out of my social life for good. 3 days later, I came home from work to find all her things gone. The key was on the kitchen counter with a note that just said, "I hate you." It was the most beautiful thing I had ever read. Life returned to normal, or a new version of it. I got my TV and PC back from Dave's place, set up my living room the way I always wanted it, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. Months went by. I dated a little, focused on work, and reconnected with the friends who had stuck by me. I barely thought about Jenna, except for the occasional pang of disgust when I remembered how she'd acted. Then, about 6 months after the breakup, the drama found its way back to me. Dave sent me a screenshot from Instagram. It was a post from Jenna. She was flashing a ridiculously large, gaudy engagement ring. She was posed with some guy I vaguely recognized. It was Todd, the guy I'd kicked out of my apartment all those months ago. The caption was pure, uncut Jenna. I said yes. Sometimes you have to leave the boy behind to find the husband of your dreams. Can't wait to start my forever with my king. I rolled my eyes so hard I almost strained something. It was pathetic, but it was also a relief. She was someone else's problem now. The post was followed by a flood of stories about their wedding plans. They were moving fast. She announced they were having a massive engagement party at the Grove, a fancy, upscale restaurant and event space downtown. She made sure to tag the venue in every post, showing off the menu selections, the floral arrangements, the custom cocktail list. It was a full-scale social media production designed to show everyone how much she had won the breakup. Something about it bugged me. The whole thing felt desperate and rushed. I knew for a fact that Todd worked a dead-end sales job and had 2 roommates. There was no way he could afford a party at the Grove, let alone the ring on her finger. And I knew Jenna's finances were a disaster. She lived paycheck to paycheck and had a mountain of credit card debt. So who was paying for all this? Out of curiosity, I did a little digging. The Grove had a public-facing events team, and I had actually worked with one of their managers, a woman named Maria, to plan a corporate holiday party a couple of years back. I still had her email. I also browsed the Grove's website and found their private events policy packet available for download. I scanned the PDF and one section jumped out at me. It was their payment policy, and it was ironclad. Section 4, Payment Schedule. A non-refundable deposit of 50% of the estimated total is required to secure a date. The remaining 50% balance is due and must be paid in full, no less than 14 business days prior to the event date. Any outstanding balance on the day of the event for additional services, e.g., open bar overages, must be settled before the conclusion of the event. The Grove reserves the right to cancel any event for which the final payment has not been received by the deadline. I remembered the chaos of our work party, how strict Maria had been about getting the final check from my company 2 weeks out. They didn't mess around. Jenna's party was scheduled for a Saturday, Chet just 3 weeks away. I wondered if she'd read the fine print. A week before the party, an idea, a terrible, beautiful, petty idea, began to form in my mind. It was a long shot, but the thought of it was too delicious to ignore. I created a new, anonymous email address. It took 5 minutes. The night of the engagement party, I saw the pictures start to pop up on social media from some of our old mutual acquaintances. Jenna in a white dress, Todd in an ill-fitting suit, both of them with plastered-on smiles. They were there. The guests were arriving. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. At 7:30 p.m., half an hour after the party was scheduled to start, I logged into my anonymous email account. I sent a message to Maria, the event manager at the Grove. The subject was, "A friendly warning regarding your Sat night event, Jenna and Todd." The email was short and to the point. "Miss Garcia, I'm a former client and I wanted to pass along some information that might be relevant to your event tonight. The bride-to-be Jenna has a documented history of financial instability and of expecting her partners to cover her expenses. I just wanted to ensure you've secured your final payment for the evening's festivities. She talks a big game, but doesn't always follow through. To give you some context on her character, I've attached a screenshot. This is a public social media post she made while in a previous long-term relationship, just before she left that partner. Hope the night goes smoothly for you." I attached the original screenshot, the one that started it all, the stupid quote with the sunset background, "Don't let your boyfriend stop you from finding your husband." I hit send, closed the laptop, and went to watch a movie. I had planted the seed. Now I just had to wait and see if it would grow. I didn't have to wait long. About an hour and a half later, my phone started buzzing. It was Dave. I answered. "You are not going to believe what I just heard," he said, and he was laughing so hard he could barely speak. One of his coworkers was at the party as a +1 and had been feeding him live updates. According to Dave, Maria, the manager, got my email. Spooked, she had discreetly pulled Todd aside and asked to confirm the final payment had been made. Todd, looking confused, said he thought Jenna's father was covering the whole thing as a gift. So, Maria went to find Jenna. She pulled Jenna aside, and in the middle of her own party asked for the outstanding balance of over $5,000. Jenna, cornered, admitted that she thought Todd had paid it. The whole thing unraveled right there on the floor of the fancy restaurant. Todd and Jenna started arguing in hushed, angry whispers. Then Todd went to find Jenna's dad, Alan, who confirmed he had only given them a check for a couple $1,000s as a gift toward the party. Not to pay for the entire thing. He had assumed, correctly, that two engaged adults would be able to cover their own party costs. The argument escalated. Todd, realizing he had been played by Jenna, who clearly expected him to magically produce the money, lost it. Voices were raised. Guests started to stare. The manager, seeing a disaster unfolding and a bill going unpaid, put her foot down. Pay now, or the party was over. The bar was closed, and the kitchen was told to stop sending out food. The public humiliation was too much. Todd and Jenna had a final, explosive argument near the coat check. He allegedly called her a lying, manipulative gold digger, threw the ring box at her, not the ring itself, just the box, and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving her there in her white dress with her family and all their friends watching. The party was officially dead. The guests awkwardly shuffled out into the night. Dave was still cackling on the other end of the line. He literally walked out on her at their engagement party. "You can't write this stuff." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the glow of the TV screen washing over the room. My phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from Dave. "Heard the party was a train wreck. Fiancé walked out." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I typed out my reply. "Looks like she's still looking for her husband." Then I opened up her contact, pressed block, and deleted the conversation for good.
When I asked my wife who she was going away with, she looked me in the eye and said, "With my ex," like she was telling me the weather. I said two words that made her smirk vanish completely. "Have fun." The casual cruelty in her voice when she delivered that confession hit me like a physical blow. Standing there in our bedroom doorway with her suitcase packed, she'd expected tears, begging, maybe even rage that would justify what she was about to do. Instead, she got two words delivered with such cold finality that her confident smirk faltered entirely. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. She stood there for another moment, clearly waiting for me to break down or explode, to give her the dramatic scene that would make her feel justified in running back to Marcus. But I just stared at her with complete calm, and I watched something fundamental shift in her expression. This wasn't the script she'd written in her head. She'd wanted me to fight for her, to make this difficult, to prove that losing her would destroy me. My complete emotional detachment seemed to unnerve her more than any tantrum could have. "That's it?" she finally asked, her voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "That's all you have to say?" "What else is there?" I replied evenly. "You've made your choice. Go enjoy the consequences." The word consequences seemed to hang in the air between us. She tried to recover her composure, forcing that smirk back onto her face as she headed for the door. "Don't wait up," she called over her shoulder with artificial lightness, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, something clicked into place in my mind. The hurt was there, sure, but underneath it was something much more dangerous. The same analytical clarity I brought to my work as a senior investigator for Chicago's largest private investigation firm. For 12 years, I'd specialized in corporate fraud, infidelity cases, and asset recovery. I'd tracked down hidden accounts, documented affairs, and built ironclad cases that had cost people everything they thought they could hide. And my wife had just handed me the perfect case. See, what Isabella didn't know was that I'd been suspecting something for months. The late nights, the sudden interest in her appearance, the way she guarded her phone like state secrets. But I'd been hoping I was wrong, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Now that she'd confirmed it so casually, so cruelly, I realized this wasn't a spontaneous decision. This had been planned, calculated, orchestrated. She'd probably been laughing about me with Marcus for weeks. That realization crystallized everything. I wasn't dealing with a wife who'd made a mistake. I was dealing with someone who'd systematically deceived me while planning her exit strategy. The difference was crucial because it meant I could approach this professionally rather than emotionally. I poured myself a scotch and sat down at my computer. Time to do what I did best. My professional background had given me advantages most betrayed spouses could never imagine. As a senior investigator at Kellerman and Associates, I had access to databases, surveillance equipment, and investigative techniques that would make a divorce attorney weep with joy. More importantly, I had relationships with lawyers, accountants, and fellow investigators who owed me favors from years of successful collaborations. My personal financial situation was even better than Isabella realized. While she'd been focused on her part-time marketing job and whatever fantasy life she was building with Marcus, I'd been pulling down $145,000 a year plus bonuses. Our house was in my name only. I'd bought it before we married and never added her to the deed, despite her occasional hints about it. My retirement accounts were substantial. I had a solid investment portfolio, and I'd been quietly building a separate emergency fund that she didn't even know existed. Most importantly, I had something Isabella and Marcus couldn't possibly prepare for. Complete documentation of everything. It's an occupational hazard of being an investigator. You document everything automatically, every financial transaction, every major decision, every conversation that matters. I had 7 years of marriage documented in ways that would make a forensic accountant's job effortless. But my biggest advantage was Marcus himself. I'd investigated him 2 years ago. It was a corporate fraud case. His company was suspected of embezzling funds from a client. The investigation had been thorough, and while we hadn't found enough evidence to prosecute, I'd uncovered enough to know exactly what kind of man my wife was running to. Marcus had a gambling problem he'd hidden from his employers, a history of financial irresponsibility, and a pattern of relationships that ended when his partners discovered his true character. The man was fundamentally unreliable, living paycheck to paycheck despite a decent salary, and had a weakness for get-rich-quick schemes that never panned out. Isabella had no idea she was trading a stable life with a financially secure professional for a fantasy with a man who couldn't manage his own affairs. The irony was almost beautiful. My phone rang. It was David Kellerman, my partner and the firm's founder. We'd become close friends over the years, and he'd noticed I seemed distracted lately. "Robert, you sound different tonight," he said when I answered. "Everything all right?" I found myself telling him everything. David listened without interruption, then was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, Robert, I'm sorry, but I have to ask. Do you need help handling this strategically? Because if you want to approach this professionally rather than emotionally, you have resources most people don't." I was thinking the same thing, I admitted. "Good, because you're about to learn why it pays to be married to someone in our business instead of running away from them. You want to make this expensive for both of them?" David explained that Isabella's decision to leave for another man, especially with the casual cruelty she'd displayed, could be leveraged in several ways. Illinois was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still mattered in asset division, especially when one party had been deceptive about the relationship. More importantly, her job at Brennan Marketing put her in a precarious position. The company had a strict morality clause for employees, and affairs with clients or business partners often resulted in termination. "Do you know if Marcus has any business relationship with her company?" David asked. I did some quick research and found that Marcus's firm had been courting Brennan Marketing for a potential partnership. Isabella had been the point person on their end. This wasn't just an affair, it was a potential ethics violation that could cost her the job she'd been so proud of. "David, I think I need to approach this systematically," I said. "Absolutely. Document everything, build the case properly, and remember, you're not the one who broke faith here. You're just responding to the situation they created." The next morning, I called Rebecca Hoffman, the best family law attorney in Chicago, and someone I'd worked with on several high-asset divorce cases. She was expensive, but she was worth every penny. "Robert, I've been waiting for you to call me about something like this," she said when I explained the situation. "I've seen how you handle investigations, and I've always thought you'd approach your own problems with the same thoroughness." Rebecca walked me through the strategic considerations. Since Isabella had left voluntarily and was currently committing adultery, my position was extremely strong. The fact that she'd been deceptive about the relationship, had planned this exit without discussion, and had delivered the news with such callousness would all work in my favor. The key is documentation, Rebecca explained. Everything you can prove about the timeline, the deception, the affair, and her behavior. You have professional advantages here. Use them. She recommended I hire a private investigator to document Isabella and Marcus's activities while she was supposed to be on this trip. The evidence would be crucial for divorce proceedings, but it would also be useful if her employer needed proof of her ethics violations. Robert, I know this is personal for you, but try to think of it as any other case. Build it methodically, document everything, and let the evidence speak for itself. That afternoon, I called Tony Blake, one of the best private investigators in the city, and someone I'd collaborated with on complex cases. When I explained the situation, he was immediately on board. Brother, I've got you covered. Where are they supposed to be? I gave him the hotel information I'd found in Isabella's browsing history. Tony promised discreet surveillance and thorough documentation. Within 24 hours, I'd have photographic evidence of exactly how Isabella was spending her girls' trip. But the most important call was to Jennifer Hayes at Brennan Marketing. Jennifer and I had worked together on a corporate fraud case the previous year, and she'd mentioned that she was now in management at her firm. I called her for lunch under the pretense of catching up. Robert, it's so good to hear from you. How's married life treating you? That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, Jennifer. I need some advice about a delicate situation. Over lunch, I carefully explained that I'd discovered my wife was having an affair, and that it appeared to involve someone her company was courting for business. I didn't name names, but I described enough details for Jennifer to clearly understand the situation. Oh God, Robert, that's Isabella, isn't it? She's been handling the Marcus Peterson account. Jennifer's face went pale. This is serious. We have strict policies about personal relationships that could compromise professional judgment. If she's having an affair with a potential business partner, that's grounds for immediate termination. I'm not asking you to act on anything yet, I said carefully. I'm still gathering information, but I wanted to give you a heads up that this situation exists because it might impact your company. Jennifer nodded grimly. I appreciate you telling me. If you get solid proof, I'll need to know. We can't have potential legal liability from employees who compromise business relationships. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. Tony had provided detailed photographic documentation of Isabella and Marcus at their hotel, including timestamps that proved she'd lied about her whereabouts. Rebecca had filed preliminary divorce papers and prepared asset protection measures. Jennifer was standing by with information about Brennan Marketing's employee policies. Most satisfying was the financial analysis I'd completed. Isabella had no idea how thoroughly I'd separated our assets over the years. She'd been spending freely, assuming we were building a joint future, while I'd been protecting myself financially. She had virtually no individual assets, no significant savings, and her job was now in jeopardy. Marcus, based on my previous investigation, was in no position to support her lifestyle. His gambling debts and financial irresponsibility meant that whatever fantasy she was chasing would collapse very quickly when reality set in. On Friday evening, my phone rang. It was Isabella, and she sounded different, less confident than when she'd left. Robert, we need to talk when I get back. About what? I asked mildly. About us, about our future. I thought you'd made that decision pretty clearly before you left, I replied. You said you were going with your ex. How's that working out? There was a long pause. It's complicated. I'm sure it is. Well, we can discuss it when you return. I've made some arrangements of my own while you've been away. What kind of arrangements? The kind that people make when their spouse abandons them for another man, I said calmly. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the rest of your trip. When Isabella returned on Sunday, the house was quiet and I was sitting in the living room reading as if nothing had changed. She walked in with her luggage, looking uncertain and somehow smaller than when she'd left. Robert, we need to talk, she said, setting down her bags. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. How was your trip? You know how it was. I know exactly how it was, Isabella. The question is whether you're going to continue lying about it or if we're going to discuss this honestly. She sat down, and for the first time in months, she looked genuinely nervous. What do you mean? I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the coffee table between us. I mean that I know you spent the weekend at the Palmer house with Marcus Peterson. I know you've been having an affair for at least 3 months. I know you've been using your position at Brennan Marketing to facilitate personal meetings with him. And I know that you've been planning this for weeks while lying to me daily. Her face went white. How do you... Robert, I can explain. Actually, you can't, I said calmly. Because there's nothing to explain. You made a choice. You planned it carefully, you executed it without any consideration for me, and you delivered the news in the most hurtful way possible. Now you get to live with the consequences. I opened the folder and showed her the photographs Tony had taken. Her hands were shaking as she looked at them. These are being provided to my attorney for divorce proceedings, I explained. They're also being provided to your employer, since your affair represents an ethics violation that could expose them to legal liability. Robert, please, you can't destroy my career over this. I made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake, Isabella. Mistakes are spontaneous. This was planned, calculated, and carried out with complete disregard for our marriage. The fact that it's not working out the way you hoped doesn't make it a mistake. It makes it a bad decision. I handed her another set of papers. These are divorce papers. You can review them with your own attorney, but the terms are non-negotiable. Since you abandoned the marriage for another man, and since you've been deceptive about assets and planning, you'll be receiving the minimum settlement required by law. What about the house? What about our savings? The house is in my name only. The savings are primarily from my income, and I've documented that clearly. You'll receive what you're legally entitled to, which is significantly less than you probably expected. Isabella stared at the papers, then looked back at me. Robert, I know I hurt you, but we can work this out. I realize now that I made a terrible mistake. The mistake you made was assuming I'd be here when your fantasy fell apart, I replied. You gambled our marriage on a man you barely know, someone who isn't in any position to provide the life you thought you wanted. Now you're discovering that actions have consequences, and you want to undo decisions that can't be undone. She was crying now, but I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Isabella, you wanted to leave. You can leave, but you can't take everything with you, and you can't come back when it doesn't work out. What about Marcus? What about us? There is no us, Isabella. You ended that when you chose him. How that relationship works out is between you and him, but it's not my concern anymore. The next few weeks unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. Isabella tried desperately to maintain her relationship with Marcus while fighting the divorce proceedings and dealing with the investigation at her job. Marcus, when faced with the reality of supporting Isabella financially and emotionally, quickly lost interest in their romance. Tony provided regular updates on their interactions, and it was fascinating to watch from a professional standpoint. Marcus had been interested in a forbidden affair with a married woman, not in building a life with someone who came with legal and financial complications. When Isabella became available but problematic, his enthusiasm evaporated quickly. Jennifer called me with an update about the workplace situation. Robert, Isabella's been terminated. The company couldn't risk the liability of an employee who compromised business relationships for personal reasons. She's also been blacklisted from several other marketing firms in the city. Word gets around fast in our industry. Rebecca reported similar progress on the legal front. Isabella's attorney had tried to negotiate better terms, but the evidence was overwhelming and her position was weak. She'd abandoned the marriage, committed adultery, and had no significant assets to claim. The divorce would be finalized quickly and on terms very favorable to me. Most satisfying was watching Isabella's desperation increase as her options diminished. She called repeatedly, sometimes angry, sometimes pleading, always wanting to work things out. But there was nothing to work out. She'd made her choice, and now she was living with it. The final irony came when Marcus cut off contact entirely after Isabella lost her job. Apparently, dating an unemployed woman with legal problems wasn't as appealing as having an affair with someone else's wife. Isabella found herself alone, jobless, and facing a divorce settlement that left her with almost nothing. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Isabella was working retail and living with a roommate in a small apartment across town. Marcus had moved on to someone new, and Isabella was struggling to rebuild her life from nothing. Meanwhile, my life had improved in every measurable way. The divorce settlement left me with all significant assets. I'd received a promotion at work, partially due to handling my personal crisis with such professional composure, and I'd started dating someone who actually appreciated what I brought to a relationship. My 2 words, have fun, had become prophetic. She'd had her fun, and now she was experiencing everything that came after it.
On her birthday, my girlfriend publicly thanked her ex for raising the bar. Everyone clapped. Then she glanced at me and said, "And thanks to him too, I guess." I just sat there. 2 days later, she found out what happens when you push a man too far. The room was full of people I didn't know, all laughing and drinking wine I'd paid for. It was my girlfriend Charlotte's 30th birthday party, an event she'd been planning for months. The theme was vintage Hollywood, and she was playing the part of the starlet perfectly. I was just part of the scenery, the guy in the background, making sure the catering was refreshed and the champagne kept flowing. The climax of the evening was the toast. Charlotte stood in the center of the room, holding her glass high. Her best friend, a woman named Becca who always looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, stood beside her, beaming. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," Charlotte began, her voice practiced and clear. "Turning 30 is a huge milestone, and I wouldn't be the woman I am today without the amazing people in my life." She went through the list. Her supportive parents, her wonderful friends. Then she paused for dramatic effect, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on a handsome, smug-looking guy near the back. "And I have to give a special thank you to my amazing friend, Derek," she said, her voice full of emotion. "My ex, yes, but also the man who truly taught me what I deserve in life. He raised the bar for what a partner should be, and I will be forever grateful for the time we had." The room erupted in applause. People clapped, some even whistled. Derek, the ex, gave a gracious little bow. It was a beautiful, moving moment, a perfect piece of public relations. Then, as the applause died down, Charlotte's eyes flickered over to me, standing by the bar. It was almost an afterthought, a brief dismissive glance. "And thanks to him too, I guess," she said with a little wave of her hand in my direction. A few of her friends tittered with laughter. The message was clear, delivered with the precision of a surgical strike in front of 50 people. Derek was the standard. I was the footnote. The guy who was good enough for now but not good enough to mention by name. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, my expression unchanged, and took a slow sip of my drink. My mind, however, was already in motion. A switch had been flipped. In my line of work, you don't get emotional when you're attacked. You get strategic. Charlotte had just launched an unprovoked, public attack on my reputation. She thought it was a social power play. She had no idea she had just declared war against a man who runs campaigns for a living. The election season had just begun. Let me be clear. I'm not a simp, I don't get played. I'm a political campaign manager. My job is to win. I take complex, often flawed candidates and build a narrative around them that leads to victory. I do opposition research, I manage messaging, I control the media cycle, and I identify and exploit the weaknesses of my opponents. My entire life is about strategy, perception, and the ruthless execution of a plan. I met Charlotte 8 months ago. I had just come off the most brutal campaign of my career, a successful but soul-crushing Senate race that had left me completely burned out. I was in what I call an off-season. I needed a break from the high-stakes world of politics. I needed something simple. Charlotte was simple. She was beautiful, fun, and uncomplicated. I knew what she was about. Her life was funded by a small trust fund and a series of projects that never seemed to pan out. She was obsessed with her ex Derek, a man who came from old money and embodied the effortless success she craved. I saw all the red flags, her constant name-dropping, her casual materialism, her need for public validation. But I wasn't looking for a life partner. I was looking for a temporary distraction, a low-stress personal project while I recharged my professional batteries. I was clear with her from the beginning. I told her I wasn't looking for anything serious, that I was just getting back on my feet after a demanding job. She agreed. The arrangement was simple. I provided the stability and lifestyle she enjoyed, and she provided the fun, easy companionship I needed. It was a mutually understood short-term contract. The problem is, she started to see the arrangement as a permanent position, and her performance, as demonstrated at her birthday party, had become unacceptable. She hadn't just insulted me. She had publicly defined me as inferior. In the world of campaigns, that's a narrative you have to kill before it takes root. So as I stood there listening to the party resume around me, I didn't feel hurt. I felt the familiar, exhilarating hum of a new campaign kicking off. My opponent? The Charlotte-Derek Alliance. My objective, a complete and total electoral victory. That night, after the last guest had left and Charlotte was passed out in bed, I went into my home office and drew up the campaign plan. Update 1. A good campaign starts with a solid foundation of research. You can't defeat an opponent you don't understand. So, for the first 48 hours after the party, I became a one-man opposition research firm. My targets were Charlotte and her sainted ex, Derek. I started with Charlotte. I already had most of the data I needed. For the past 8 months, I had been the primary source of her discretionary funding. I went through my credit card statements, meticulously logging every expenditure. The designer clothes, the $500 dinners with Becca, the spa days, the weekend trips. I wasn't just tracking the money, I was mapping her entire lifestyle ecosystem. I knew her donors, me, her T supporters, her vapid friends, and her core message, a life of effortless luxury. Then I turned my attention to Derek. He was the ghost in our relationship, the gold standard she constantly compared me to. His public image was flawless. He was the founder of a buzzy tech startup, he drove a vintage sports car, and his Instagram was a curated gallery of his perfect life. But in my line of work, you learn that the shinier the image, the darker the secrets. I hired a freelancer, a digital forensics guy I use for digging up dirt on political opponents. I gave him Derek's name and his company's name. I didn't want anything illegal. I just wanted a clear picture of his financial and professional reality. While my researcher was digging, I initiated phase 1 of my own plan, narrative destabilization. Charlotte was still blissfully unaware. She thought I had just been in a bad mood at her party. She tried to smooth things over the next day. "You were so quiet last night," she said, pouting. "You didn't even tell me I looked pretty. I just told her I was tired." I let her believe her little power play had worked, that I was the one on the defensive. My first move was subtle. One of the pillars of Charlotte's social standing was a charity committee she was on. It was for a big, glamorous gala that happened every year. She didn't actually do any work, she just liked having her name on the letterhead. I, however, had made a significant donation to the charity in my name a few months prior, a fact she loved to brag about. I called the head of the organizing committee, a woman I knew professionally. I explained that due to some portfolio restructuring, I needed to pull my donation for the year. I was polite, apologetic, and vague. I knew the call would be followed by another call, from the committee head to Charlotte, asking what was going on with her incredibly generous boyfriend. The fallout was immediate. Charlotte confronted me that evening, her voice shaking with rage. "What did you do?" she demanded. "Cynthia from the committee called me. She said you pulled your donation. You're making me look like a fool." "It was a business decision, Charlotte," I said calmly, not looking up from my laptop. "Market conditions have changed. I'm reallocating my capital." "This isn't about capital," she shrieked. "This is about my reputation. You did this to punish me for what I said at the party." "What you said at the party was just data," I replied, finally looking at her. It helped me reevaluate the return on my investments. The charity gala, it turns out, is a bad investment. This was a calculated move. I was speaking to her in the only language she understood, the language of social currency and status. I had just devalued her primary asset. While she was reeling from that, my researcher came back with the gold mine I was hoping for. Derek's tech startup, Innovate Next, was a complete sham. It had no product, no revenue, and was burning through cash at an alarming rate. Its only funding came from a handful of early investors, mostly friends of his wealthy father, and a series of high-interest personal loans. Derek wasn't a tech genius. He was a trust fund kid playing entrepreneur with other people's money. The report also contained another beautiful detail. Derek's vintage sports car, the one he paraded all over town? It was a lease. A very expensive lease that was co-signed by his father. And he was 2 months behind on the payments. This was the core of my opponent's platform, a lie. And I was about to expose it. Update 2. The next phase of the campaign was to take the opposition research and weaponize it. A good campaign manager doesn't just release damaging information, they create a narrative around it. They build a story that the public can understand and that the media will amplify. My target audience wasn't the general public. It was the small, insular world of investors and socialites that Derek and Charlotte inhabited. I created a new, anonymous email address. From that address, I drafted a memo. It was written in the dry, analytical style of an investment prospectus. The subject line was, "An unsolicited due diligence report on Innovate Next." The memo was a masterpiece of corporate demolition. It laid out, in excruciating detail, the company's financial situation. It included their burn rate, their lack of a viable product, and a projection showing they would be insolvent in less than 6 months. It didn't make any accusations. It just presented the facts. The final page of the report was a list of publicly available records showing that Derek had a history of failed projects, all quietly funded and then buried by his father. I sent this memo to 3 people: Derek's father, the lead investor in his company, a man known for his ruthless business practices, and a well-known local business journalist who loved a good story about a failing startup. While that digital bomb was ticking, I moved to dismantle Charlotte's remaining support structures. Her best friend, Becca, was a key advisor in her campaign of entitlement. Becca worked as a personal shopper at a high-end department store. Her job depended on her reputation and her client list. I knew from listening to their conversations that Becca had a habit of borrowing clothes from the store for a weekend and then returning them on Monday. It was a common, if unethical, practice. I also knew that she was helping Charlotte do the same thing, using her employee discount to buy expensive outfits that Charlotte would wear once for an Instagram post and then return. I made another anonymous call, this time to the store's corporate loss prevention hotline. I reported that an employee at their flagship store was running a sophisticated return fraud scheme, costing the company thousands of dollars. I provided Becca's name, and I suggested they review the security footage and inventory logs for the past 6 months, paying close attention to high-value items that were returned on Monday mornings. With both of my primary opponents targeted, I just had to wait for the system to do its work. The first explosion came from Derek's camp. The business journalist ran a story a few days later, a brutal takedown of Innovate Next, calling it a vanity project and a case study in millennial entitlement. The lead investor, furious that he'd been misled, pulled his funding and threatened to sue. Derek's father, publicly humiliated, finally cut his son off. Derek, in a panic, called Charlotte, presumably for support, but Charlotte was dealing with her own crisis. Becca had been fired from her job. The store had indeed reviewed the security footage and found a mountain of evidence. She was not only fired, but the store was also pressing charges for theft. Becca, in her own panic, had immediately blamed Charlotte, telling the store that Charlotte had pressured her into it. The two of them were now locked in a bitter war, accusing each other of being the mastermind. Charlotte's world was imploding. Her social status was gone, her best friend was now her enemy, and her perfect ex-boyfriend was revealed to be a fraud. She was in a freefall, and she still hadn't realized I was the one who had cut her parachute. She came to me a week after the story about Derek broke. She was crying. Her whole life was falling apart. Derek had dumped her, saying he needed to focus on his problems and that she was a distraction. Becca was threatening to sue her. She was a social pariah. "I don't understand what's happening," she sobbed, sitting on the edge of our couch, my couch. "It seems like you're experiencing some market volatility," I said, my voice calm. She looked at me, her eyes full of confusion. Can I just stay here for a little while?" she asked, her voice small. "I have nowhere else to go." "No," I said. "Our contract has expired. It's time for you to find a new position." I handed her a box. "I took the liberty of packing some of your things." She was officially on her own. Final update. It has been a month since I initiated the campaign. Mel, the final results are in. and it was a landslide victory. After I told her to leave, Charlotte had a complete meltdown. She had no money, no friends, and no prospects. Her parents, who had always enabled her, were dealing with the financial and social fallout from Derek's public implosion and couldn't support her in the style to which she was accustomed. She tried to launch a smear campaign against me. She and what was left of her friend group tried to brand me as a cruel, hot, heartless monster who had abandoned her in her time of need. But they had no platform. Their social circles were in ruins. And more importantly, I controlled the narrative. I executed one final move. I gave an exclusive, off-the-record interview to the same business journalist who had exposed Derek. I framed it as the story of a successful private man who had been targeted by a group of social climbers, only to uncover a web of fraud and deceit. I didn't name Charlotte, but the details were so specific that anyone who knew the situation knew exactly who I was talking about. The story painted me as the victim who had smartly extricated himself from a bad situation. It was the perfect counter-narrative, and it inoculated me from any of her attacks. 2 days after that story ran, Charlotte showed up at my door. She wasn't angry anymore. She was just broken. She was sobbing, begging me to take her back, saying she had made a terrible mistake. I let her say her piece. When she was done, I just looked at her. "You haven't made a mistake, Charlotte," I said. "You've run a terrible campaign. Your strategy was flawed, your messaging was inconsistent, and your key supporters were unreliable. You chose the wrong opponent." She just stared at me, the final, horrifying realization dawning in her eyes. "This was you," she whispered. "All of it. The story, Derek, Becca, it was all you." "I manage campaigns," I said, my voice as cold and flat as a tracking pole. "You publicly attacked my character. I treated it as an in-kind donation to my own campaign. I used your attack to launch a counteroffensive. You thought we were in a relationship. We were in an election, and I never, ever lose." I closed the door. That was the last time I ever saw her. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had to move back home with her parents. Her trust fund ran out, and she's now working as a receptionist at a dentist's office. Derek is facing multiple lawsuits from his former investors. Becca is still dealing with the legal consequences of her return fraud. My revenge wasn't about yelling or screaming. It was about strategy. It was about taking the tools of my trade and applying them to my personal life. She saw me as a boring, stable provider, a footnote in the story of her glamorous life. She failed to understand that the quiet guy in the back of the room is often the one running the entire show. She thought she was the candidate. She never realized she was just the opposition. And the opposition never stood a chance.
She uploaded a TikTok of me sleeping, captioned, "Imagine waking up next to this every day." So I quietly packed my things and left. Now her followers are dragging her while I'm dating someone who thinks I'm perfect. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. Hey Reddit, throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm Alex, 28, working in IT support in a mid-sized city. I've always been the steady type, reliable job, gym routine, not big on social media drama. About 2 years ago, I met Sarah through mutual friends. She was 25, bubbly, and chasing her dream of becoming a full-time influencer. She had this TikTok account with around 50K followers back then, mostly lifestyle and comedy skits. I fell hard. She seemed genuine, and I loved supporting her ambitions. From the start, I was all in. I sacrificed a lot to make our relationship work. Flashback to our first few months. She was struggling financially, bouncing between part-time gigs while building her online presence. I covered rent for our shared apartment when she couldn't, bought her a decent camera and lighting setup out of my savings, stuff that cost me a couple grand. I even edited her videos late at night after my shifts, suggesting ideas to make them funnier or more engaging. I turned down a promotion that would have required relocating because she said she needed stability here to grow her audience. "You're my rock, Alex," she'd say, cuddling up after a long day. It felt good, you know? Like I was building something real. But over time, things shifted. Sarah's account started blowing up, hit 100K followers about 6 months ago. She got obsessed with authenticity and relatable content. That's when the comparison started. She'd scroll through her feed and point out these ripped, charismatic guys, other influencers with six-packs and flashy lifestyles. Look at how he engages his audience, she'd say, but it always felt like a dig. You're so comfortable, Alex. It's cute, but sometimes I wonder what it'd be like with someone more on my level. I'd brush it off, thinking it was just her venting about work stress. I mean, I wasn't shredded like those guys, but I kept in shape, and our life was solid. We had date nights, inside jokes, the works. Then came the emotional abandonment. She'd stay out late at networking events with other creators, coming home tipsy and distant. Her posts got flirtier, dancing videos with vague captions like, "Who wants to join?" I'd see comments from guys hitting on her, and when I'd mention it felt disrespectful, she'd roll her eyes. "It's just for engagement, babe. Don't be insecure." One night, I caught her DMing this guy Jake, another influencer in our city with a bigger following. Nothing explicit, but the hearts and late-night chats stung. I confronted her gently, and she waved it off. "He's just a collab partner. You're overthinking." The real betrayal hit about a month ago. I woke up one morning to my phone blowing up, notifications from friends, coworkers, even some family. "Dude, you okay?" Saw the video, harsh. Confused, I opened TikTok. I barely used it, but had an account to follow her. There it was, a video she'd posted the night before, already at 500K views and climbing. It was me, asleep on the couch after a long day at work. I was snoring lightly, hair messed up, mouth half open in that unflattering way everyone looks when they're out cold. The caption? "Imagine waking up next to this every day, faced with tears of joy, #relationship goals, #real life, #boyfriend fails." She'd added goofy filters, exaggerated drool effects, clown music in the background. The comments were a nightmare. "Girl, run." "Face with tears of joy, he's cute in a dad bod way, but upgrade time." Why settle for that when you could have hot influencer tag? My stomach dropped. This wasn't some private joke. She'd turned me into content, a punchline for strangers to mock. I felt exposed, violated, like my trust was just fodder for her likes. Views kept ticking up to 1 million by noon. I sat there, staring at my screen, heart pounding. Why? I'd been nothing but loyal, pouring everything into us. Flashback to the week before. I'd surprised her with tickets to a concert she wanted, even though I was wiped from overtime. She posted about the amazing night, but cropped me out. Now this. It was cruel, undeserved. I paced the apartment, replaying our good times, the road trips, the lazy Sundays, but the humiliation burned. I didn't yell or text her immediately. I needed to process the unfairness, the confusion. How could someone I loved do this? She got home around lunch, phone in hand, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "Babe, the video's going viral. We're at 1.2 million already." She didn't even notice my face at first. I set my coffee down, keeping my voice steady. "Sarah, that's me in the video. Sleeping. You posted it without asking, and the caption, it's humiliating." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Alex. It's just a joke. My followers love the realness. Imagine waking up to this every day. It's hilarious. Relatable content is what blows up. You should be happy. It's boosting my engagement big time." That's not funny to me. It's disrespectful. People are dragging me in the comments, calling me a loser. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "You're being so sensitive. This is my career. You knew that when we started dating. If you can't handle a little fun, maybe you're not cut out for this world." Jake thought it was genius. He said it'd get me collabs. Jake? The guy you've been DMing? This is about more than the video, isn't it? She shrugged, smirking a little. "Look, Alex, you're great and all. But yeah, I've been talking to Jake. He's exciting, gets the influencer life. You're predictable. Safe. I need someone who matches my energy, not drags it down." Her words hit like a gut punch, but I didn't snap. I just nodded, feeling the weight of all I'd given up settle in. The apartment felt smaller, the air thicker. I sat with it for a moment. The confusion, the silence after her dismissal. Why beg? She'd shown her true colors. Update 1. The breakup. I walked away without a fight. Reddit, thanks for the early comments on my original post. A lot of you said NTA and to dump her. Well, that's exactly what happened next. After that conversation, I didn't argue or plead. I just detached. While she was in the shower, Humming like nothing was wrong, I started packing. Quietly, methodically. Clothes, laptop, the few things that were mine. The camera gear? I left it. Her career could keep it. I wrote a short note. I deserve better than being your punchline. Goodbye. No drama, no accusations. Just facts. She came out, towel around her head, and saw the bags by the door. Her smirk faded a bit. What the hell, Alex? You're leaving over a video. I zipped the last bag, keeping my tone even. Yes, Sarah. The video, the comparisons, Jake, it's all clear now. You've been emotionally checked out for months, using me as a backup while you chase whatever this is. She scoffed, leaning against the wall. Oh, please. You're twisting this. I didn't cheat. Jake and I are just friends, for now. But fine, if you're going to be dramatic, go. You'll never find someone who puts up with your boring routine like I did. I need a man who's ambitious, who gets the grind. You're holding me back from my dreams with your 9 to 5 stability. Jake says I could hit 500K followers if I focus on collabs without distractions like you. Her logic was so twisted, blaming me for her betrayal, justifying it as growth. I could have fired back about all I'd sacrificed, but what was the point? She was smug, dismissive, like I was the problem. Distractions? That's what I am now. I asked calmly. Exactly. You're sweet, but I outgrew you. Go find some vanilla girl who wants Netflix nights. I'll be fine, better, actually. I picked up my bags. Take care, Sarah. And I walked out. No slamming doors, no last words. I drove to a buddy's place across town, crashed on his couch. Blocked her on everything temporarily, just to breathe. The next days were rough. I sat with the betrayal, replaying her words in my head. The unfairness gnawed at me, how I'd been loyal, committed, only to be discarded like yesterday's content. Work was awkward. A few colleagues had seen the video, gave pitying looks. I hit the gym harder, started journaling to process the confusion. Why me? But slowly, the silence helped. I realized this was my chance to rebuild, away from her manipulation. Little did I know, karma was already brewing. But that's for the next update. Update 2. Sitting with the silence, and watching karma unfold. Hey Reddit, it's been a couple of weeks since my last update, and wow, the support in the comments has been overwhelming. A lot of you predicted she'd come crawling back, but first, let me fill you in on what happened after I left. I didn't dive into revenge or badmouthing her. I just focused on me. That emotional middle ground after the betrayal? It's brutal, but necessary. I let myself feel it all. The confusion, the unfairness, the quiet nights staring at the ceiling wondering how someone could discard loyalty like that. My buddy let me crash on his couch for a bit. Then I found a small studio apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No echoes of her laughter or her ring light setups cluttering the space. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, and ironically, without the distraction of editing her videos or waiting up for her late nights, I nailed a big assignment. My boss noticed, gave me a raise and more remote flexibility. It was like the universe was saying, see, you were holding yourself back too. I started small habits to rebuild. Gym sessions turned into a routine where I'd blast podcasts on self-growth, not her trendy playlists. I picked up hiking on weekends, something I'd always wanted but shelved because she called it boring nature stuff. Flashback to one of our last good days. We'd planned a hike, but she bailed for a spontaneous collab shoot with Jake. I went alone that time, felt the sting, but now? Solo trails cleared my head. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was space to process. Why had I let her comparisons chip away at me? I'd been committed, undeservedly mistreated, made to feel like a backup plan. Sitting with that unfairness didn't break me. It sharpened my resolve. I even saw a therapist a few times, unpacking how her manipulation had eroded my confidence. You're not the punchline, the therapist said. It stuck. Meanwhile, karma started creeping in, slow at first, then like a tidal wave. I wasn't stalking her. I'd unblocked but muted everything. But mutual friends kept me in the loop, and honestly, the internet did the rest. That viral TikTok? It backfired spectacularly. At first, the comments were mixed, with her diehards laughing along. But then the tide turned. People started calling her out. This is mean girl energy. Why humiliate your BF for clout? Bullying disguised as content unfollowed. It snowballed. Hashtags like hashtag toxic influencer and hashtag respect your partner trended in her replies. Views hit 5 million, but her follower count stalled, then dipped. Sponsors pulled back. One clothing brand she'd just partnered with ghosted her after the backlash. Then Jake entered the picture fully. From what I heard, she moved in with him almost immediately after I left, posting subtle couple Y content without showing his face. But Jake? Turns out he was a walking red flag. Mutuals told me he'd been bouncing between influencers, using them for cross promos before ditching. With Sarah, it escalated fast. He got controlling, demanded she feature him more, criticized her ideas. One night, things got ugly. He yelled at her during a live stream glitch, and viewers caught audio snippets. "You're nothing without me," he snapped before she cut the feed. The clips circulated, and boom, more drags. Jake bailed a week later, posting a story about focusing on solo growth while tagging a new girl. Sarah was left scrambling, her account hemorrhaging followers down to 80K. Bills piled up. Without my rent contributions or the sponsor cash, she had to sell some gear. Friends said she looked rough, isolated, posting desperate Q&A videos that flopped. I didn't gloat. I just observed from afar, letting the justice feel earned. It was ironic. She'd mocked me as predictable, but her exciting choice unraveled her world. Months passed like this, me thriving in quiet dignity, her spiraling. I even started dating casually. Met Emily at a work conference. She's in marketing, down to earth, thinks my IT jokes are hilarious. No filters, no comparisons, just real connection. We'd grab coffee, talk for hours. "You're steady in the best way," she said once. It healed parts of me Sarah had broken. But the story doesn't end there. Sarah's attempts to reel me back in. That's when things got desperate. Update 3. The desperate reaches, texts, calls, and toxic entourage. Reddit. If the betrayal was infuriating, this phase was a masterclass in hypocrisy. About 2 months after I left, the first message pinged through. I'd unblocked her by then, figuring silence was my boundary. It started mild, but escalated quick. Her friends and family? Total enablers, piling on like I owed her redemption. I stayed composed, no emotional hooks. Here's how it unfolded. First attempt, a text at midnight. "Hey Alex, miss you. That video was dumb, I deleted it. Can we talk?" I read it, felt nothing but detachment. No reply. A day later, voicemail. "Babe, things with Jake fell apart. He was awful, not like you. I see now how good we had it. Call me." Still, crickets from me. She amped it up, multiple texts. "Please, I'm sorry. I was chasing the wrong things. You were always there for me." Then the shift to desperation. "Alex, I need help. Rent's due, and sponsors bailed after the backlash. You know how hard this is." I ignored it all, focusing on my life. Emily and I were official by then. We'd gone on a hike, and she snapped a pic of us. No mocking captions, just best day with the best guy. It felt worlds away from Sarah's world. A week later, she showed up at my new apartment, must have gotten the address from a mutual. I opened the door, saw her standing there, makeup smudged, looking smaller than I remembered. "Alex, thank God. Can I come in?" I stayed in the doorway, calm. "What do you want, Sarah?" She fidgeted, eyes darting. "I messed up big time. Jake? He was abusive, controlling everything. He took some of my savings for joint content and ghosted. I'm broke, alone. My followers hate me now. Comments are brutal. But you? You were safe, reliable. I realize I threw it away. Let's try again. I'll change, no more videos about us." Her voice cracked, but I saw the hypocrisy, framing me as safe, like it was a consolation prize, after mocking it before. "That's on you," I said evenly. "You chose Jake," the excitement. "Remember calling me a distraction?" She stepped closer, desperate. I was wrong. Influencer life is fake. Jake exposed that. "Please, Alex. I need you." The anger bubbled up then, her true colors flashing. "How dare you ignore me like this? After everything I did for us. You're acting like a child." I shook my head. "You did for us? You humiliated me for likes. Goodbye, Sarah." I closed the door, locked it. She banged once, yelling, "You'll regret this." Then silence. But she wasn't done. Next came the toxic brigade, her mom and sister, who'd always treated me like an accessory. Group text first, from her sister. Alex, you're being cruel. Sarah's suffering because of that stupid video. Man up and talk to her. Then a call from her mom. Listen here, young man. Family sticks together. She's learned her lesson. Jake was a mistake. You overreacted to a joke. Come fix this. She's crying every night. I answered that one firm. Mrs. Last name redacted. With respect, Sarah chose her path. She dismissed me, mocked me publicly. I'm not responsible for her consequences. Her sister jumped in on the call. Oh, get over yourself. You're punishing her for growing her brand. Pathetic. She deserves better anyway. Funny, I replied coolly. That's what she said about me. Click. Block them all. The attempts peaked there, desperate pleas turning to rage, exposing her entitlement. Power had flipped. She was unraveling, while I built forward. Update 4, final closure, at the party, with my upgrade. Final update, Reddit. This happened last weekend, tying it all up. A mutual friend's birthday party, neutral ground. I figured I'd go since most had sided with me after the full story spread. Emily came too. We'd been solid for months. Her support making the past feel distant. Sarah showed up, uninvited from what I heard, probably hoping to corner me. She looked rough, hair unkempt, outfit mismatched, like the influencer polish had cracked. Her account? Down to 60K, posts sporadic and ignored. Jake's betrayal had gone public via a diss track from another creator, sealing her isolation. She spotted me across the room, beelined over while Emily was grabbing drinks. Alex, we need to talk. Privately. I stayed seated, composed. No, Sarah. Say it here or not at all. She glanced around, voice low but urgent. Please. I see now, you were the best thing I had. Jake destroyed me. I'm in therapy, trying to rebuild. Let's start over. I promise, no more online BS. I miss us. Emily returned then, sliding next to me with a smile. Sarah's eyes widened. The contrast hit her. Me, thriving, with someone new who valued me. I turned to Sarah, firm and definitive. Sarah, that chapter's closed. I've built a life where you're just a memory, a lesson in what I won't tolerate. Emily here. She thinks I'm perfect as I am. No captions needed. Remember, imagine waking up to this? Well, I wake up happy now, without the drama. She stammered, hypocrisy exposed. But, I outgrew you. No, that was stupid. You're better off? Wait, you're with her. Yeah, I said, standing. The powers flipped. You're desperate. I'm indifferent. Don't contact me again. It's over. She teared up, muttered something angry under her breath, and stormed out. Partygoers whispered, her downfall on display, my growth evident. Later, her last text, blocked before I read it. I'm done, Reddit. She's irrelevant, powerless in my world. Thanks for the ride. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.